Because if you knew how to achieve your goals, the difference is the value of that education. And conversely, the difference is the cost of that debt of ignorance. And so the number one priority in my life has always been to pay down ignorance as fast as I possibly could using whatever currency I needed to. So if that was relational capital, that means using my network or doing favors for people or paying money, which is the least efficient way of doing it, I would try and find a way that I could pay down ignorance to achieve the things that I wanted. So I could get the information, so I could get the learning. When I started, I paid to get into rooms. I paid $25,000, $35,000. And you're like, wait, I don't have that right now. I get it. Well, you pay $10,000 was the first thing I ever bought that was information based. That's what was the first thing I ever invested. And how was I able to do that? Because I'd saved for 2 years and I'd saved 50 grand up. And so for me, I was like, okay, this is the direction I'm going in. I'm gonna invest in learning. And when I got in that room, the first room I was in was a gym owner room, and I didn't have a gym. And I paid to be in that room so that I could start the gym the right way. When I paid to the $25,000 room, it was an internet marketing room. And guess what? I didn't have an internet marketing business, but I paid there so I could try and learn how to do it the right way rather than try and start it the wrong way and have to fix it. And so I think a lot of people wait too long to try and learn. I always want to grab my future and pull it towards me. And so I was willing to spend as much money as I had available to me to make those bets because it was a bet on me, and I knew I would never lose that. You can't lose you. You always have diamond hands on you. Like till the day you die, you've got you. And so the thing is about investing in education is that sometimes the lessons you learn aren't the lessons you expect to learn, but you learn them nonetheless. And so sometimes you go into an education thing and you don't get what you thought, but you still get something, and it was still more than what you paid. And so when I went into those rooms, I'd already used up all my money to get in the room. So I was like, okay, what else do I have? And so at the time, I knew how to sell. And so I just went to every single person in the room and was like, can I help you sell stuff? And so they'd be like, well, sure, my sales team sucks, or sure, my script sucks, or sure, my offer sucks, or I don't know how to overcome these objections. And so I would spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on the phone with these people, training their teams, writing scripts, and they're like, dude, thanks so much. This is I can't believe you did all this. And the thing is that if you're going to pay for help from someone, pay in full. Don't half-ass a free gift. And so if you're good at something, you're good at a skill, you're an accountant, you don't do 1 page of someone's taxes. If you're gonna do a favor, you do the whole thing. You treat them like they're a paying customer, and then they will respond as though you have paid them. And so it will be like you've given them money, and then you will get that reciprocity. And at the time when I did those favors for all those people, I didn't know what I was gonna ask for. I just knew that I would need someone's help in the room, and I'd rather have more phone numbers I could call for help that owed me one than none. And when I wanted to make a webinar, I called one of the people who's good at webinars. When I wanted to run ads, I called the guy who's really good at running ads. When I wanted to figure out funnels and landing pages and stuff, I called the guy who was really good at funnels and landing pages, because each of those guys wasn't good at what I was good at. And so we were able to barter, which, by the way, still to this day is the most efficient form of trade, because Uncle Sam don't take any piece of it. For us or them, everybody wins. 11. There's 2 types of things that you can learn. And so if you're trying to pay down ignorance, you got to know what you're buying. So you can learn about something that exists that you didn't know existed, and then you can learn how to do something. And so one is called declarative knowledge, knowledge of existence. The other is called procedural knowledge, which is knowing how to do it. And so if I explain to you that private equity exists, and this is how you can buy, package, and sell a business for a lot of money, now you know about it, which is a prerequisite for learning how to do it. And so when you buy into access to networks, to people, to relationships, the primary thing that you're learning is learning about things that exist. They're going to tell you tax strategies, investment strategy, marketing strategies, sales strategies, business models that you haven't heard of. That is what you learn there. But if they tell you those things, you leave and you get excited. But then you're like, well, shoot, how do I do it? Which is the second thing that you learn how to do, which is the how part. And so when you're going into any kind of investment, whether you're investing time, you're investing trade, you're doing some work for someone so they do work for you back, or you're investing money, you better be sure what you're buying. And the interesting thing about those 2 types of knowledge is that the declarative knowledge tends to teach you things that you didn't know existed. It's the unknown unknowns. That is why some of these are the biggest breakthroughs when you get into those rooms with someone making 10 or 100 times more than you. They see the world in a different way. Whereas when you go for how to, it's more predictable what you're going to get because you're specifically trying to learn how the scales you know exist, and you just need to clarify the steps to getting there. And so just delineating what you're trying to learn will help you actually learn it. So the first time I learned declarative knowledge was that Facebook ads existed. That was in 2013. And so I learned how they worked, and I learned just enough to make them work. So I learned declarative knowledge that they existed, and I learned how to do them in 1 weekend. Super valuable. Now, I was able to ride that skill set for a couple of years until I was like, you know what? I need to learn how to do this at a bigger scale. I wanted to go national. We started gym launch, the turnarounds. And so I was like, I need somebody, because I'd only run local ads, which by the way are much easier than national style ads. And so I tried to go all around asking people for help. And at this point, I'd probably used up the relational capital that I had before. So I called a bunch of agencies. All of them said they were going to charge me too much money that I could afford. And then finally, I just asked one guy, hey, instead of your monthly rate of $5,000 a month, which I couldn't even come close to affording at the time, I was like, can I just pay you per hour? Now, of course, he said, I don't trade my time for money, except of course he works over time and then he gets money later. But sure, anyways, he doesn't trade time for money. When I said, it's America, everything's got a price. And he said, you know what? $750 an hour, I'll do it. And I was like, done. Now, mind you, $750 an hour was still a ton of money for me. And so I showed up like it was Harvard on steroids for these calls, because I would prep for the call, I had my notes out, I recorded it. I was like, I had 2 people that would be like, make sure I don't miss anything, right? And so I would go and I had him first document the process of what he did to run ads as though he were me. Then I had him demonstrate it. So he clicked the buttons so I could see what he was doing, and I had him stop and explain to me each of the steps so I could put it in my little checklist too. And then finally, I duplicated in front of him, which means document, demonstrate, duplicate. I then did in front of him to make sure that I was doing it right. And so once I did it right, and I did it right multiple times in a row, and I didn't need him to correct me while I was doing it, that's when I'd mastered the skill. It took me 8 sessions. So it took me 8 hours, and whatever that is times 750 in order to learn. 12. A watch isn't going to replace work. A Rolex isn't going to replace reality. And so what happens a lot of times when you're coming up is that you want to get status, right? You feel downtrodden, you feel like no one respects you, and that's normal as a young man. That's what you do. You don't have any status. That's what you come to the world as, and you got to go make it. And so the thing that you want to do early on is get status as fast as possible. The thing is a lot of times you trade short-term status at the expense of long-term. And so as somebody who has lots of young men in my audience and middle-aged men in my audience, you'll never impress someone who's wealthier than you with assets. you'll only impress people below you. So you have the wrong target audience. Because to impress poor people, you outspend them. To impress rich people, you outwork them. And once I understood this, I was like, oh, the guys who are at the top of the game give me respect because they know I'm a future one of them. Because they know when they were my age, they doubled down on the hustle, not the highlight reel. And that overspending on status happens at every level. So in the beginning, it's a watch, right? And a little bit later, it might be a car payment. And a little bit later, it might be a really big expensive car payment. And then it might be a really big condo. And then it might be a really nice house. And then it might become a yacht. And then it becomes a jet. And the thing is that you add zeros to it, but again, you only impress the people underneath of you, not the people above you. And if you want to impress the people underneath of you, by all means do it. But know that that's what you're about. Buy time like a rich person, buy stuff like a poor person. And so when you're thinking about time being the most valuable thing, if you've already dedicated yourself to working and earning an income and learning the skills, then you just want to pour as much time into that as you can. And so fundamentally, you're buying your time back, your low-cost time or low-income time, so it's prepping food, going grocery shopping, cleaning your house, whatever else you do, with more income earning time. I remember the first time I closed a $500 sale at my gym, I realized that that sale took me 30 minutes. And I knew that for me to buy groceries for the whole month 4 times would take me $500 and far more than 30 minutes. And so I thought to myself, my God, if all of that time I was grocery shopping and food prepping and cleaning up after myself and then doing laundry, if all of that time I could just sell more, in a couple hours, I could do all of that stuff for free. And my poor mind was like, hey, that's wasteful. You could be doing that stuff on your own. But you buy time like you're rich. You spend money on stuff like you're poor. So buy time, not stuff. Because when you buy time, you can replace the money you bought it with and some. Let me put some real numbers to this. So the average American spends $1,500 a month on 96 hours of work. And that breaks down roughly to cleaning their house, cleaning their clothes, buying food, preparing food, and cleaning food. I'm not even gonna get into the 4 hours a day that the average person spends on social media and watching television. You're gonna keep doing that, so I'm not even gonna try to convince you not to. But if you just replace those things that you probably don't wanna do, it costs about $1,500 per month. And so as long as you make more than $15 per hour, because it costs about 96 hours to replace those activities, which means if I can replace 96 hours of work for $1,500, and it's also 96 hours of draining work, like it expends energy. It's not like you just sit there for 96 hours. You're actually getting actively tired from doing that stuff. If you took that same thing, and if you make more than $15 per hour in your active job, it makes sense. It's the logical decision for you to buy that and then go make more. Because you're also gonna make money twice. Not only are you going to save the time and then work and make more, but you also get better at your job because all of those extra hours aren't just making you more money, you're also becoming more skilled. So you get better faster. And so if I have a year-long guy where he spends $1,500 a month to replace all of those things, at the end of that year, not only does he have more money at the end of the year, but because he had an extra 100 hours of high energy time that he didn't have to spend per month, he's getting 50% better per year. And so that assumes that he doesn't get rewarded in his work for getting better, which by the way, in reality, you typically do as long as you ask. Who you compare yourself to, not who you spend your most time with, will be the highest predictor of how much you make. And so we are motivated by the things that we lack. And so if you are very hungry, it's because you lack food. If you lack sleep, you're very tired. You're very motivated to sleep. And so if you want to be motivated to make money, it's not enough to not have money. You have to have a desire to make a lot more money. And the strongest way to create that desire is to visually see the people who are making far more than you. And so it's about who you compare yourself to, not who you spend time with. Fundamentally, the richest man in the world only spends time with people poorer than him. But he continues to get richer because he's comparing himself to the future version of himself. That's his reference point. That's his reference group. And when you start out, there's real people. As you evolve, it becomes imaginary. I heard this quote from one person to another when I was walking through the street, and he was talking about buying something that was a no return investment. Let's call it a big toy. And he said, there will always be time to make money later. And I remember hearing that and thinking, that's what someone who's poor says. And so, to be clear, I think if you want to enjoy life, by all means do it. This video is about making more money. That's the stated objective. And so that's what I'm talking about. And so the idea that you're going to spend now, work later, is the fundamental crux of poverty. And so you have to break that with all your heart. And when you have those people around you, and this was a toy, but it could be, let's go out. It always comes under the guise of YOLO. We have to live life. But everyone who says that assumes that getting better and learning is not life and is not living. And for me, the purpose of my life is to learn as much as I can and pay down ignorance as much as I possibly can and squeeze the last drop of potential out of me that I can. And the way that I do that is through learning. And so for every person that asks you to sacrifice working now so that you can have fun now, just make sure you know the trade you're making. I'll be real with you. There's no perfect way to live your 20s or even your 30s. You either end up an underskilled 30-year-old or 40-year-old or an underlived 30-year-old or 40-year-old. And so fundamentally, it's not either or, but knowing the trade-off and living with the consequences because you can't do them over. And on a personal note, I sacrificed, or said differently, invested my 20s in order to have lots of skills and underlived. But in that same time period, I built to where I am now. And I genuinely am very happy with where I am now in life. And I would not redo those years to have lived more. Because the real secret is, as I was doing it, I loved the game. And so some of the best moments of my life, when I look back, were some of the moments that I felt like I was struggling the most, because it was when I underwent the most growth. And so it's interesting because the pain that you go through in the moment often becomes the purpose that you look back on in your life. And so the idea that we want to avoid pain so that we can live today, I think conflates reality, because when you look back on your life, a lot of times those are the things that define you. And so we should be seeking those out, not running away from them. So if you're not sure who you compare yourself to versus who you spend time with, when you're about to make a big decision, the people who come up in your mind, who you're weighing their opinions on your decision, those are your reference group. The people whose opinion you care about. And so if all your friends, for example, are billionaires, and they all sacrificed their 20s, got rid of their friends, got rid of their material belongings, spent all their time working for free so that they could learn this big skill set and then double down in their late 20s and then made it big by the time they were in their 30s and 40s, those people, if that was your reference group, if you're thinking about leaving home, what do you think that reference group is going to say? For sure. And because of that, you're out the door. And so whenever you have these frictional moments where you are like, I think I should do this, but whoever that person is, whoever that voice is, if they don't have what you want, don't listen to what they say. Only listen to other people's opinions about your life if their dreams for you are bigger than yours. If they're not, disregard. Invest, then spend the rest. So the idea is that you invest first and then spend what's left over. And so an interesting thing is that Switzerland has the highest per capita millionaires in the world without having the highest GDP or even GDP per capita. And so how are they able to do that? That means that they have different rules around money, which is what this video is about. And so if we adopt those rules, we can get those outcomes, which means these are just decisions that we get to make. And the easiest way to do that is you take what you need off the top and then you spend the rest on what you want. And so it comes down to saying that you need your future self to be bigger than your current self today. And so you invest first and then you spend the rest. And so the way that I like to think about this is point 16. This is how we operationalize this, which is automate investing and then create friction around spending. And so you want to take the money off before you see it. If your job, for example, has a way that they can automatically skim off your paycheck and put it into some sort of investment stuff, do it. If they don't have that, have one of these apps that does segmentation or has multiple bank accounts that you can say, this automatically goes here, this automatically goes here, and I don't touch this. And if you want to get real crazy, the advanced version of this is that as you make more money, you keep what you're living, the spend the rest part. Instead of making it a percentage, make it a fixed amount. And then as you make more, you're just investing more and more and more into the future. Now you're like, well, how do I invest in the future if I'm just starting out? The future is you. But you're making sure that when you're investing that money, you know whether you're buying declarative knowledge or you're buying procedural knowledge. You're learning about stuff that you need to learn or you're learning how to do it. And the longer you do this, the easier it gets. For the record, I have 0 Lamborghinis, 0 Rolexes, 0 jets, while also being able to buy multiple of these every single month. And so the idea is you start to become addicted to getting good. And once you get that first little reward of seeing an investment that you made in yourself start paying off, you see your income go up, you start making more money, you're like, oh my God, this game is awesome. And so that flow of investment that comes to you is one of the best games that you want to win for yourself. You want to just keep making cash flow PRs, keep making that investment account PR and hit records in that account. And if you get addicted to that game, if you can just do that from everything in this video, you've already won. And so you want to automate deposits and manualize withdrawals. So everything that is automatic in terms of like your rent, you want to write it as a check. Or drop it off as cash. If you have payments that you make, like a car payment, as much as you're like, wait, this is gonna cost time. The value that you get back for knowing exactly where you spend your money is going to make you more money than the 1 hour a month that you have to pay your bills. That is a promise. And so that may also mean if you make it difficult to buy, well then maybe you delete some of the apps on your phone. Maybe you don't save your credit cards on the sites that you tend to spend money on. You wanna make it as hard as you can to spend money and make it as easy as possible to stack it. Number 17. It's easier to make $1 million than it is to make $100,000. And let me explain. If I told you to go down the block, you would go at a certain speed. If I said, go as fast as you possibly can, at some point you'd run and then you'd improve your form, and you get better footwear, and then you change your clothes, but at some point you wouldn't be able to run any harder or any faster to get there. But if I said, I need you to go 5 blocks, you might be like, huh, okay. Now some people will then try to walk or run that. But the smart cookie then says, huh, I could take a car and I would go a hell of a lot faster. And if I'm speeding in my car, I'll probably get to the 5th block before the other guy gets to the end of the 1st block. And so the magic of thinking bigger is that you change your solution set, meaning you use different tools to accomplish the objective. The reason $100,000 per year is the hardest amount of money to make is because it assumes for most people that they will trade their time in terms of hourly wages or salary in traditional work in order to get it. And so they have to spend all of their time in order to make the $100,000. But if I said make $1 million or even 10 million before the world explodes, you would know that you would have to use a different way of solving that problem. And so the reason it's easier to make $1 million or $10 million is because you can do it in less time with more skill. If you start solving for the skills required to make $1 million or $10 million. You don't want to love money. You want to learn to love making money. So there's 2 misconceptions and then 1 truth around this. The first misconception is money is the root of all evil. And then that obviously is a quote from the Bible, 1 Timothy 6:10. The 201 version, someone says, no, it's not money that's the root of all evil. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. But that's just the 201 version. The actual translation, there's 5 translations for it, and 4 of the 5 are the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Meaning, if you desire money more than anything else, then you will commit the other sins in order to attain it. And so the idea is that it's only a pathway that has a high likelihood of causing you to do things that are unethical or immoral. And so there's this huge, terrible paradigm in society that money is somehow good or bad. It is just potential energy. It's just bottled time. And that bottled time can build bombs. That bottled time can build hospitals. It can build wells. It can build schools. It can make YouTube videos that educate. And so the idea that you're afraid to make money means that you're afraid of having power. And maybe you should be afraid of having power because maybe you'd misuse it. But if you do want to help the world, then all it's going to do is amplify your ability to do that. And if you have that mission on your heart or in your mind, then it's your duty to remove everything else in your fucking way to go get it. The more money you make other people, the more money you make. And so the amount of money that you will be able to make in your career comes down to 3 variables. Number 1 is the value that you're able to create in total for all of the people you create for, times your ability to negotiate how much of that value you're able to get, times number 3, which is the amount of other people who can also create that value. And you have to have all 3. Because for example, if you develop a skill of sales, and you can create millions of dollars in value for a company, and you're really good at negotiating, then in theory, you'd get millions and millions of dollars from that company. But if somebody else is willing to work for a few $100,000 a year in order to make that value, then your position disappears. And so that gives us the blueprint for making money, is that not only do you want to be able to create that value, you want to be able to create a value in a way that no one else can. And the way that you do that is not by, in my opinion, learning some incredibly secret, unique skill. What makes skills unique is the skill set. It's the stack of skills together that create the uniqueness. If someone else has to try and recreate something I could do, they would have to have lived my life. And so your life and the time you spend becomes your competitive advantage. It becomes your asset. It becomes the moat that other people can't chip into. They'd have to go through being a competitive fitness person, and then go through owning lots of gyms, and then go through doing turnarounds across the country, and then go through doing a licensing business, and then go through making a supplement business, and then go through launching a meal prep business, and then also starting a software company, and then going through an exit for both, and then starting a private equity. They'd have to do so much stuff. There are so many skills that are required. Your time is your weapon if you invest it wisely. And the one thing that I would leave you with is that money loves speed, wealth loves time, poverty loves indecision. I spend more time than I deserve with billionaires and multi-billionaires. And something I noticed is that all of them share similar behavior patterns. And there's 11 that I found. And the best part is you can steal just about every single one of them. Enjoy. I crossed $100 million in net worth at age 31. I'm 35, significantly higher than that now. And I have the privilege of talking to lots of people who are at $1 billion plus. And so in this video, I want to break down a handful of themes that I've seen repeated that can make you significantly more successful. The rich buy time, the poor buy stuff, ambitious people buy skills, and lazy people buy distractions. As much as these seem like 4 different groups, it's really like you have these pairings. Rich people use money to buy time. Ambitious people use time to buy skills. And the reason it's ambitious people is because generational wealth isn't transferred through assets. It's not transferred through stuff. It's transferred through education. It's transferred through skills. And so there's this Sanskrit proverb that I love. If you have a good son, you don't need to accumulate wealth. If you have a bad son, there's no point in accumulating wealth. And so the idea that you're going to pass on your wealth to a child who doesn't have the skills makes it irrelevant. Because fundamentally, either it is a good son who has skills, and then if the son has skills, then whether you transfer the wealth or not makes the wealth itself irrelevant. And I find that there's so many things that are like this in wealth creation that you don't understand until you're on the other side of it. Because the answers that you're looking for are not in your newsfeed. They are not in the distraction. And so the vast majority of lazy people that I've encountered continue to distract themselves because the difficulty of looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, I am inadequate, is too painful. And so instead, they would rather watch fluff videos on the internet that make them feel good and tickle their ears rather than confront reality, that they are just not good enough. And so they consume the stuff that's like, I am worthy, I deserve these things. In other words, entitled to them, which by the way, if you feel entitled to something, then when you get it, you are never grateful because you thought you deserved it to begin with. We know that gratitude, for example, is something that increases your subjective well-being in life, which is that you enjoy life more when you're grateful for what you get, which means that you have to, by very definition, expect nothing, which means you're entitled to nothing, which means that you deserve nothing. In reality, you are worthy only of the things that you currently have because you have already gotten them. You have proven that you can work in minimum wage jobs, so you are worthy of the compensation of minimum wage. And as much as this is painful, and I'm sure this will get clipped 100 times to show me as some evil rich guy, I'm willing to take that hate for the few people who will hear this message and decide to change the way they act. You can be ambitious and distracted, which keeps you poor. When I started out at my peak, I had 9 businesses because I heard 7 income streams make you wealthy, but it doesn't. 7 income streams just spread you 7 ways. And I had 9. I was like, well, 7 good, 9 must be better. To give you context, I had a chiropractic agency, I had a dental agency, I had a gym turnaround business, and then I had, at the time, 6 locations, so there's 9, where it is, boom. And I had partners in each of these businesses. I was still the one who was required to rainmake, meaning I was the one who was required to sell customers into all 9. If you are required to work inside of the business, then you can only really do one job. And so when people hear that someone has 7 income streams, it's because they own assets that generate that kind of income. But in order to gain the cash to then buy the assets that create the cash flow, it requires time and focus. Let me make focus real for you. Focus is a very amorphous term. Focus is measured by the amount of things you say no to. And inversely, you could measure it by how few things you say yes to, meaning the most focused person says only yes to one thing and says no to literally everything else. And so the next thing that separates the rich from the poor is it's 100x, not 2x. And so this concept is one that I had dinner with a friend of mine who's a public CEO, and I asked him what he had done to grow the business. I think from a $200 million market cap to a $1.2 billion market cap in less than 2 years. All right, so that's absurd growth for a company. And I was like, so, what are you doing primarily? He said, I'm shaking hands, I'm kissing babies, I'm going to events all the time. And I was like, well, how many? And he's like, well, I'm going to do 66 events this quarter. And I was like, in person? He was like, yeah. I was like, they coming to you? And he's like, no, I'm going to them. I want to make this real. He has a wife, he has kids. And before anyone listens and says, I can't believe it, well, cool, he makes trades. If anything, I would hope that people watch this and say, I wouldn't make that trade. In which case, great. Also, don't complain about not having what somebody who has made that trade made. And so one of the big misconceptions, by the way, this is a sales thing too, is that people want your outcome their way. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to say, hey, I want to not change the way I'm eating. I want to not change the way I'm living, but I want to have a six pack and I want to be in shape. I want to continue to live this way and I want to get the 10 chick or the 10 guy. I want to continue with my work-life schedule as I currently have, but I want to have hyper growth. They are traits, they're price tags. When you go to the store, you either want the shoes and you're willing to pay the price or not willing to pay the price. That's it. You can't pick the price for the shoes. You pay it or you don't. My telephone back to myself is that I thought I worked a lot when I was younger. And I did spend a lot of time working, but I made so little progress because a lot of that time I wasn't actually creating output. I encourage people to do something called the 12 by 30. All right, so it's very simple, and it's actually not as unsustainable as people would think. You work 12 hours a day for 30 days straight, no weekends. By the last day, you realize, 1, you aren't made of glass. 2, how much more you could be working. 3, how much faster you could be achieving your goals. 4, how much you could be getting better every single day. 5, you don't need to work like this forever, but if you need to do it for a season or for a reason sometime in the future, you've got that gear in you. And 6, there are people who are working more than you, who are beating you. And you get all of those lessons for the low price of getting more done in a month than you probably did last quarter. And so everyone, and like, of course, you've got one side of people who are like, I work more than this now. And of course they don't, they obviously don't. And the thing is that people are like, well, I work like that, but I take a couple days off, right? That's the point, is that you have to push through it. Now, can you work 16 by 30? Sure. If you want to, you're welcome to work more than that. Because I've found that working 6 to 6 is kind of like what I do every day anyways. I'm on 12 by 100, you know, in terms of how I think about working. There's plenty of days that I work 15, 16-hour days because I get here at 5 or 6 and then sometimes do an event, sometimes dinner, things like that afterwards, and it's done. And that's where you have to be on, not just at the office, not just in front of your computer, but people actually demanding things of you on a regular basis all the time, being on camera. And I'll tell you that there are levels to this. Like working alone for a full day is not as exhausting as being on stage for a full day, being on camera for a full day, because every second that you are not peak, you are losing. You can take a break while you're working alone. You can't take a break when you're on stage, when you're meeting customers, when you're making content, like, right? Like every minute that is not recorded is basically a minute wasted. There's a whole team here behind this camera, right? That is making this stuff for you, and I'm costing them every second I'm not showing up. I remember there was a season of my life where I think I had like 9 straight months of this, and it was not 12, it was 15, 16, because I had to wake up at 4 to get to the gym, where I was at the gym, but I'd wake up at 4, and then I would get the class ready. I'd open the gym doors at 4:30, would start the classes at 5. And the last class at night would end, it would be a 7 o'clock class, would end at 8, and then at 8, I would then do billing, I'd reach out to old customers, I'd confirm lead appointments for the next day, all that sometimes until 10, 11 at night, and then I'd wake up again at 4. And so I don't know what the hours are there, but it's more than 12. And I did that for 9 months straight. And I used to describe it as the kind of tired a good night's sleep couldn't fix. It was tired, it was deeper than like one sleep. I needed like weeks to like basically come back to normal. And the thing is that I think it is valuable because you have to learn that you have that gear. I think that gives you supreme confidence when you're entering any new endeavor, because you know that you have acquired the trait of being relentless, that you do not relent, you do not let up, you do not stop until you get what you want. And you know that you can push through being tired or being underslept or being overwhelmed because you realize that you didn't die and that you've done this before. And so the difference between the newbie and the veteran is that the veteran looks on something and looks back on what they have done to get to that point and says, I've seen this before. This is another one of those. And that's why they don't have the anxiety. That's why they don't have the stress. That's when they get on stage, they crush it. That's when the high pressure situation, they still breathe normally. The heartbeat doesn't go up because they've done it before. And the only way that you can get to the point where you can say you've done it before is to do it now. And so I define work as volume times leverage. And so it's about how many times you do something and how much you get for each time you do it. In the beginning, you need to do a lot more of this, right? You do way more volume. Because of that volume, you gain skill. And then the leverage also increases. And so you get 100x the volume, which then over time builds skill, which then gives you more for what you put in. And then over time, that continues to increase your output. The thing is that this concept of 100x, not 2x, has applied to so many different areas of my life. Like when I paid a large brand for insight into how I could grow my personal brand when I decided to get into this game, I was like, hey, I'm not growing that fast. And he said, oh, well, pull up your social media profiles. And we pulled them up one by one. And he said, look what you're doing, what I'm doing. And he had genuinely been doing 10 times more volume than I was doing. And so he basically said, you're not doing enough volume. I then said, okay, that was clear as day. I need to do more volume. And the thing is when we did more volume, we got better at doing it. And so now we continue to do the same volume as I did in the beginning, which was 10 times more than when I started. We get even more output. And then I had a different friend who talked to me, a billionaire guy. He was thinking about getting into content. And he said, hey, I'm really not growing that fast. And I got to have the exact same conversation with him. But the thing is that this guy had done 100x, not 2x before in his life. It was just that he got to realize, like me, that it has been 100% domain specific. And so when I showed him my Instagram and his, I showed him my TikTok and his, I showed him my YouTube and his, and I said, dude, I'm making 450 pieces a week, you're making 7. And he was like, got it, like understood. He immediately got it because he had already learned that lesson in a different domain. I want to zoom out for a second. Right now is a period of time where I'm working really hard. I'm working a lot. I'll give you context as to what a lot is for me. So this year, the first 100 days of the year, I didn't have a day off. And so my time was only spent working. And so it's like, well, what's the difference between when you were quote working all the time, when you're younger and working all the time now, is that what I get done in a day is significantly greater than what I got done. And the quality of that work is also higher, because the thing is that you learn how to work. You get better at working the more you do it. And so a lot of people are like, man, I feel like I'm not that productive when I work. Like, what should I do? It's like, work more. Like, you work more until you get better at working. I remember when I was a legal intern at a company in France called Arkema, if you want to know how they say it. And I was a legal intern, and I was spending the whole summer there, which by the way, they always try and like use and abuse interns. I was like, man, I'm working so hard. And I talked to one of these legal partners, and I only had one exchange with this particular legal partner who's, high up in the firm. And she said, oh, she's like, that's cute. You don't even know what work is. She said, you don't even know how to work. She's like, you spend time here. She's like, but you don't know how to work. I just remember how dismissive what she said was. But I understood. I mean, I understand now, especially what she meant. It was like, you're spending a lot of time here, but you're not getting anything done. And it takes time, it takes reps to get better at working itself. And so that measure of focus, the equal opposite of distraction, is just how long you can stick with it. And I can tell you that me from a very visceral perspective, when I work, there are many times, like, you know, when you work and you're like, man, I feel like I like need a break. The thing is that that break period for people who aren't as good at working might be like the rest of the day. And the better and better that I've gotten at working is that I can like kind of like whip my head back in and be like, confront, like, keep going. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna keep going. And then you kind of realize that there's like a 5-minute, sometimes 15-minute period where like your output slows a little bit, but then you catch the next draft and then you're in again. It's being able to whip yourself back in, and that muscle of doing that takes practice. And the only opportunity that you get to flex that muscle, to practice it, is to work yourself to the point of fatigue, to the point where distraction or respite or rest would be beneficial, or you feel like it's what you crave right now, and then being able to be like, no, I can power through this. And the thing is you can power through it. It just takes practice, and practice takes repetition, and being willing to be uncomfortable for an extended period of time. And it's kind of like when you're eating and you're dieting, there are moments where you get these cravings where you're like, man, I'm starving, I want something sweet. If you've ever dieted before, and this is where repetitions help, it only lasts like 20 minutes. So if you ever do this, by the way, dieting hack, it's just set a timer when you're like, man, I really want something. Wait 20. And if you still want it, which you rarely do, because it usually lasts less than 20, sometimes just 5, it'll just go away. And the same thing happens with focus, but we then just take off for our diet for the day. We order a pizza, right? We order ice cream, right? Or we take off working for the day, right? And we just say, I'm just gonna watch Netflix for the rest of the time, or I'm just gonna go hang out with friends, whatever, or I'm gonna go out. But I will say now that I have worked for 100 days straight, and that was in the earlier part of this year. I think this year I've probably taken 3 or 4 days off since the year started. And I still probably worked until like 2 on those days, but I still consider those like more or less days off. You're not gonna die. And so I think back retroactively, or like historically, like there were people who were forced to work for years on end or they would get killed. As gruesome as that may seem, I see that as hopeful in that they have already demonstrated that it's possible. Like you can work continuously for an extended period of time, because fundamentally you're just alive, you're moving, right? And like you think super ancestors, it's like they didn't have computers, they just were around. And so you do keep busy while you're awake. And so you might as well keep busy continuing to nudge things forward. And I can't tell you the amount of times where now I'm like, my mind checked out, and I was like, no, my brain checked out a little bit, but I'm gonna keep going. And then 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours more pass, and I'm like, oh, I actually finished everything that I said I was going to do. And it's just so much more work, and it's fewer days off, and it's earlier mornings and longer nights, and it's being able to do that for an extended.
Monsters with dark blue card frames and red arrows are called link monsters. Link monsters aren't part of your main deck. They begin the duel in your extra deck, a separate deck of up to 15 cards that you can special summon monsters from when you fulfill certain requirements. To special summon a link monster, you need at least as many face-up monsters on the field as the number of link arrows on the link monster that also meet the requirements listed on the link monster. This number of arrows is also the monster's link rating. During your main phase, declare which link monster you want to special summon. Then, send the same number of face-up monsters that meet the requirements from your field to your graveyard as the number of link arrows on the link monster. Then, special summon the link monster face-up in attack position to an extra monster zone if you're not currently using one. Or if a link monster is already on the field, you can summon your link monster to one of your main monster zones that one of its link arrows points to instead. This is called a link summon. You might be wondering why the number of monsters written in the requirements is often lower than the number of link arrows and the link rating. That's because there's a special rule for when you use link monsters to summon other and the link rating. That's because the number of monsters written in the requirements is called a link summon. You might be wondering why the number of monsters written in the requirements is often lower than the number of link arrows and the link rating. That's because there's a special rule for when you use link monsters to summon other link monsters. Firewall Dragon says it requires 2 or more monsters, but it has 4 link arrows. That's because when you're counting monsters to make sure the number of monsters used matches the number of link arrows, you can use the number of link arrows on a link monster you already control when you're counting instead of 1. You can't do this when you're counting to make sure you're using 2 or more monsters, so you can't use one Firewall Dragon as the sole monster needed to summon a second Firewall Dragon. But you can use Decode Talker and any other monster, even a link monster, to link summon Firewall Dragon.
I link summon! Link 4, Firewall Dragon!
Link monsters don't have defense points and cannot be summoned in defense position to make sure you're using 2 or more monsters, so you can't use one Firewall Dragon as the sole monster needed to summon a second Firewall. It has 4 link arrows. That's because when you're counting monsters to make sure the number of monsters used matches the number of link arrows, you can use the number of link arrows on a link monster you already control when you're counting instead of 1. You can't do this when you're counting to make sure you're using 2 or more monsters, so you can't use one Firewall Dragon as the sole monster needed to summon a second Firewall Dragon. But you can use Decode Talker and any other monster, even a link monster, is often lower than the number of link arrows and the link rating. That's because there's a special rule for when you use link monsters to summon other link monsters. Firewall Dragon says it requires 2 or more monsters, but it has 4 link arrows. That's because when you're counting monsters to make sure the number of monsters used matches the number of link arrows, you can use the number of link arrows on a link monster you already control when you're counting.
Welcome back to
to another Idiot's Guide to Summoning. Congratulations on learning all about normal, special, ritual, fusion, synchro, exceeds, and pendulum summoning. I bet you've been enjoying getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Now that you're all caught up with all those new and crazy summoning techniques. Good, good. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. Got some bad news for you. Have you ever heard of Link summoning? Yeah, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, you see, due to the new Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrain series coming out, they've decided to not only add a new type of summoning, but change up the field pretty drastically. It's not all bad though, as it means I get to invite you to another An Idiot's Guide to Link summoning. First up, before we get to Link summoning, what the heck has happened to the field? An easy way to describe this is, remember World of Warcraft when that dragon came and like fucked up the landscape and changed it all? It's kind of like that, but the Yu-Gi-Oh! Version. This is what the field used to look like, and now this is what it looks like with the introduction of the new rules. You'll have to give it one thing, it does look tidier. So let's work our way up, shall we? You'll notice that the spell and trap card zones are still at 5. However, the left and rightmost spaces are now pendulum zones as well. What they have done is remove the separate pendulum zones and merge them with the end spell and trap card zones. All this really means is if you play pendulum monsters in your deck, if you place pendulum scales, those cards will take up 2 of your spell and trap card zones, leaving you with only 3 spaces for your other spell and trap cards. Of course, if they are removed, you can use them for spell and traps again. Next, the monster card zones are now renamed the normal monster zones. This is because you can no longer summon extra deck monsters into the monster zones. Instead, you have to use the brand new extra monster zone. Yes, this means what you think it does. You can now only summon 1 extra deck monster at a time. Also, I know there are 2 spaces, but you can only actually use one of them. Say I summon an Xyz monster on the left, then the right one becomes my opponent's, and I am unable to use it. Now, if this was all the changes that Konami had made to the game, then you would be right in thinking you can only use 1 extra deck monster at a time. But that's not the case, due to the introduction of Link summoning. First up, what is a Link monster? A Link monster is an extra deck monster card. Its colour is a dark blue with a hexagonal pattern similar to a honeycomb on it. You will notice that Link monsters have no levels and no defense points. This is because Link monsters cannot be, under any circumstances, in defense mode. They just won't budge. As well, this means because they do not have levels, Link monsters cannot be used for ritual, synchro, or Xyz summons. So instead of defense points, you will notice a number. This is called a Link number. This is important as it's what you need to look at in order to summon the monster. Simply enough, a Link monster's Link number determines how many effect monsters need to be tributed in order to summon the Link monster from the extra deck. Let's say I have this monster, Decode Talker, which has a Link number of 3. To summon a Link 3 monster, you need to tribute 3 effect monsters. Simple enough, right? You just have to tribute effect monsters equal to the Link number. Again, let's say it was a Link 2, you tribute 2 monsters. Easy peasy. There is also another way to summon them. Going back to Decode Talker, you can also use another Link monster as a tribute. Let's say this guy, Honeybot, who has a Link of 2. That monster now counts as 2 monsters since it has a Link number of 2. So, you can tribute Honeybot and 1 more effect monster. This now totals 3, and voila, a Link summon of a Link 3 monster. So, what makes the Link monsters so special then? Well, now that you have your Link monster on the field, this is where the Link markers come into play. If you look at the card, you'll see some arrows around the monster's frame. The arrows that are lit up red will point to different monster zones. These zones are now linked to the monster. Being linked does 2 things. First up, the Link monster's effect works with the linked monsters in the linked zones. For example, Honeypot's effect. Neither player can target monsters in this card's linked zones with card effects. Also, those monsters cannot be destroyed by battle. So, the monsters on the left and right of this card now receive this monster's effects. Pretty cool, right? The second thing Link monsters can do is the linked zones can now be used to summon more extra deck monsters. That's right, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, and even more Link monsters can be special summoned from the extra deck to a main monster zone that is currently a linked zone. If you want to visualize a Link monster, then do it like this. Imagine it's electrically charged. Once they hit the field, they can send a current to wherever they point to. This powers up the zone and makes it possible to summon more powerful monsters to them. As well, with another Link monster, you can keep the current going and extend how many zones you can summon powerful monsters to. And with that, that is basically all you need to know about Link summoning. Of course, there's going to be more questions about this new summoning style, but the best way to learn is getting out there and trying it yourself once you can get your hands on the new cards. Worst case, just go and watch the new Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrain series to learn all about the new way of summoning.
Wow, thanks a lot for teaching me about Link summoning and the new game mechanics.
Period of time. I know the whole idea of like, you know, work on the things you love and never work another day in your life. That's just, I just don't think it's true. Like there's so many things that I don't enjoy doing that I have to do. And that's why, at least for me, my saying is always, I will do what is required. How I feel about it is relatively irrelevant because the things that have come from doing what is required have made doing the requirements something that I know will pay off. And so I kind of like feast on those morsels of past achievements as the fuel to continue doing things that may be uncomfortable or unpleasant in the moment. And most work isn't unpleasant. It's just work. It's like, I have to get this done, right? And you're like, I get to get this done, sure. But like, I'm just being real. For me, it's usually not sunshine and rainbows. Like I work a lot and I'm tired. You know, I slept 9 hours last night, which was the first time I slept 9 hours in a while, and I feel amazing right now. But sometimes you got to work on 6. Sometimes you got to work on 5. And so think about this hypothetical extreme. Let's say that you played video games. That was all you did. When I say that's all you did, you didn't go out, you didn't talk to people, you didn't see anyone, you didn't eat, you didn't sleep, but you would be incredibly focused. Now, at that point, you say, well, in order for him to play more video games, he needs to sleep. So there are contingencies, right? You do need to eat or you'll die. And so there are the fewest requirements necessary to maintain consistent focus on the one thing. And those things become requisites for focus rather than distraction. Like there are periods of time where you will need to rest. That rest, therefore, is productive because it increases your total output in the one thing that gets you the most leverage, that gets you closest to your goals in the shortest period of time. And so this isn't a video of me saying, you know, work until you die. Well, you will work until you die because we all will die and we all probably will work at some point. But it is more a video of saying that every single thing that is not a requisite for you continuing to do the one thing, that one yes, are all distractions. They are all things that take away. And people have a hard time with this because they like to say, like, you need to have balance. But this is what poor people do not understand. And I am going to do my very best to kind of like pass down a message from the future to my past self about this. And this goes for entrepreneurs specifically, which is you do not understand how much work it is. Like you think you understand how much work it is. And I've had multiple times in my life where I've met someone who was way further ahead than me. And I saw them actually working 5 to 10 times more than me. And I was like, wow. And there's the scene in Invictus, which is a movie with Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon. I love this moment. There's an exchange. I'm paraphrasing, but he says something to the extent of, I've heard that you've been playing with an injury. And Matt Damon just kind of says, well, no one ever plays at 100%. And I just love that because to me, that kind of encompasses the champion mindset, which is that it's not about playing when circumstances are perfect. It's that playing creates perfect circumstances. We have to learn to play when the chips are stacked against us. It's like having values. Values are only valuable when they are tested. You can say you're loyal, but if you know if you're in a hotel room and a girl is there and your wife isn't there, there's no way that she finds out. That is the test of whether you're loyal. It's when there's stakes. Test of whether you have work ethic is whether you can work when you're tired. It's whether you can work when you're distracted. It's whether you can work on things that you don't find pleasant. Because all of that, and I see this with some of the young guys. Like there was a guy we hired, and then in 3 days he said, I don't think this is for me. And he got hired to a sales role, and he was making outbound calls. I was like, you don't think this is for you? I was like, you don't even know what's for you. You were here for 3 days. You didn't even get the ability to get good at the basic thing. And so there's a level of intolerance for discomfort in some sort of expectation that it's going to be this amazing thing that you're going to love at all times, and it's just not. And so I'm okay being a different voice in the entrepreneur space. That's not like, passion is what gets you through the hard times. I don't think so. Passion has not been the thing that has gotten me through my harder times. It has been desire. It has been wanting to make something into a reality by dragging something from your mind into the world. And sometimes I feel like you're giving birth to this thing, which for every mother, which I obviously haven't given birth, it's like you give birth kicking and screaming. It's a painful experience, but then there's life that happens afterwards. And I see work as very much labor. And we even use the same word. It's labor. It's work. It's painful. The pain is that like you're halfway through, I would imagine, and you're like, I still have to keep pushing because it's still not alive yet. It's still not out. And so I think learning to push through that, and this is the part that my friend was saying, where he's like, they don't get it. They don't get it. They think that I do one of these speaking events and they see my Instagram and they think, oh, okay, well, why is my brain not growing like that? He's like, well, I was in 5 different cities this week and I just had to do FaceTime with my kids in order for them to see me. And people are then like, I wouldn't make that trade. Fine, but don't want what he has. And so let me draw this out for you in a nice little visual to show you how I see work, right? This volume that you need to do. So you have excitement, right? So when you have this new idea, which we have them, and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? This is so good. The thing is that once you become neutral and then you become worried and stressed, this is when work begins. And so in the bodybuilding world, they'd be like, okay, once you have achieved failure, that is where your working reps begin. It's an old school bodybuilding thing. I'm sure the science bros will be upset about it, but I think that it very much qualifies for how it relates to work in this world is that your motivation fades very quickly. It's that work begins once motivation stops. And I think if you measure it that way, then you will measure how much you work and how hard you work very differently. So it reminds me of this Muhammad Ali quote where he says, I hated every minute of training, but I would tell myself, suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. I have this tweet that I said a minute ago that I really like. And so whenever I get to a low point where I think, why do I even bother? I just try and remind myself, this is where most people stop and this is why they don't win. That period, that wall that you hit, like that is the champion wall. That is where you leave everyone else behind because everyone only works until their point of excitement and then they stop. It's like you have to find that next gear. So the next point is that they cannot copy your proof. People want to gain reputations. They want to be known for certain things. They want to get status, but people can copy your promises. They can copy your services. They can copy your logo. They can copy your name. They can't copy what you've done. I have sometimes younger entrepreneurs who reach out and they're like, hey, I want to build a big brand. And they're like, I want to start making content. But I advise them to only make content if they're truly documenting and don't transition into teacher mode. Because the thing that will build your brand is the stuff you do. Like we look at the business titans that are out there. You look at Elon, you look at Bezos, you look at maybe now Sam Altman, you look at Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, and they now have these quote big business brands, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett. They are considered probably the leaders of the business world in terms of thought leadership. But did they get there by building personal brands, or did they get there by building personal businesses? And then by building personal businesses, which I'm joking here, they just built big ass businesses. By extension, people wanted to know who was the person behind this big business. And then they built their credibility before they built their likability. Everyone wants to put the cart before the horse. Everyone wants to put they want to eat the pudding before they have the proof. Yeah, the proof comes before the pudding in the real world. In a world where anyone can say anything and get instant reach, trust is the thing that is the scarcity. That is the rare commodity. And so the idea is if you want to build a really big brand, then you want to index super hard on trust. And the way that people can trust you is that you do what you said you have done. The reason Mr. Beast videos worked is because he used his videos as proof. He didn't say, I am super knowledgeable. He said, look, I did something that no one else was willing to do. His first video that went viral was him counting to 1 million or something crazy. Right? And so he did something that other people were not willing to do. And so he just happened to have documented that thing. And so if you're like, well, how do I get proof? I'm so young. It's like, well, you just do epic stuff. And then people will be like, wow, he did epic stuff. This is interesting. And so it still requires epic amounts of work in order to do that. The reason that there's such a misconception about overnight success is that it's just that there's a threshold over which you are good enough that you go viral. All right. And so this is, call it like, here is the viral, viral moment. All right. So this is our viral moment right here. The thing is that we, the person, live this whole life. What we in the public see is this moment, what happens since. And so we have the perception of overnight success. And this is why it's so difficult for people to wrap their heads around, because they want to model what they see, not what occurred. And so we have to model what they did, not what happened. And so this fundamentally is the inputs. This is what they put in for a long period of time. What we see here is the output. This is what's visible. And so this is where it gets especially difficult for people trying to learn, is that most people get rich and then they get weird. And then what happens is people then try and copy what they do here, not what they did to get there. And so they copy the wrong stuff. They model the plateau, not the rise. So you don't get rich by flying on private jets. You get rich, then you can fly on private jets. And so a big thing that richer people do is that they will act with urgency. And I would say this is just how richer people, this is entrepreneurs specifically that I'm making this video for, is that they act with urgency. Right? And so you can tell in some ways how successful someone's going to be by how quickly they do things. The gap between thoughts and action. And so this is something I personally work on a lot, which is like how quickly between when I make a decision to do something does it actually occur. And you can improve your potency as a person, how powerful you are, by decreasing the gap between thoughts and action. Like if you think about the hypothetical extreme of this, the God figure, if you will, thoughts and reality are one and the same. He thinks planets and universes and they appear. And so that would be the ultimate demonstration of power, in my opinion. And so we can approximate that. We get as close to that as we can by shrinking the time it takes between when we think and when we decide and then when we ultimately do. When you don't have any more information to collect in order to make a decision, then you make the decision. And you make the decision by eliminating alternatives. So like literally the word decide comes from decadere, which is Latin for to cut off. And so the question is, what thing are you eliminating by making the decision that you're going to make? And a really easy tactical thing is whenever you say I'm gonna get this done by the end of the week, ask yourself, can I get it done by the end of today? And that seems like a very small hack, but that increases your pace of progress by 7x. And so if you hear that, you're like, wow, 7x. It's like, yeah, and for that reason, there are people who are working 100 times faster. And I think that this is a really good cultural thing, which is you can just say end of day, not end of week, and not end of month, end of week. So in each of the instances, this is a 4x increase, this is a 7x increase, right? And you can even go end of day goes into end of hour. Now this is one that Layla talks about a lot. She's a master operator. Is that she heard this from a mentor. She said, if it's a 5-minute task and you have 5 minutes, do it now. And so the amount of times where I'm like, hey, we should do this thing, and then literally in 60 seconds it's handled by Layla, like while I'm just walking around talking, just like shooting ideas out there, is baffling. And so her speed of like, that's a great idea, it's already been, delegated out. Like she doesn't keep things on her plate. And so there's this big falseness that I think is propagated by a lot of the social media world because it feels good and get lots of shares, because it gives people permission to be lazy. It gives people permission to tell themselves that they're great just the way they are. I wholeheartedly reject that entire notion. The idea that they sell you is that you're young, you've got time. And I think that is false, because all this does is extend how long it takes you to remember that, number one, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Like I just looked at my newsfeed this morning and there was a guy that I knew who's my age and he just died of stomach cancer. Really sad, really nice guy, wife and 3 kids. Into fitness, really in shape, just a freak thing that happened. And so the assumption that you've got time assumes that you're gonna live forever, that you're gonna live to 100. And we know that that's not true. And let me put this in perspective. 3 out of 10,000 people live to 100. And so everyone has this assumption in their mind that they're like, yeah, I'm at 50, so I'm gonna make it to 100. Yeah, well, you've got a 3 in 10,000 shot at doing it. Very unlikely. More realistically, you'll die at the median, which is 74 for men in the US, which means that at 37, you're actually at the halfway point, just in years. But if you adjust for the increase in speed of time, so the same reason that your kid at 5 years old thinks that something takes forever when you say it's gonna happen next year, and when you're 40, something that happens next year feels like you blink your eyes and it's there, is that when you're 5, 1 year is 20% of your life. When you're 40, 1 year is 2.5% of your life. And so it very much in a real way is 9 times faster than it is for your 5-year-old. And so it's my belief that as we get older, we don't become more patient, time just moves faster. And so if you adjust for that time speed, your midpoint isn't 37, it's closer to 21. And so this is also why, in my opinion, when you think back on your life, you have so much meat in the first 20 years, so much stuff happens, all these material life events. And it's because in that time period, it was half of your life. And then after that, everything happens real fast. And so what you have to realize is 1, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. 2, nothing is gonna be easy. Just get over it. Every time you think, oh, this could look, just immediately skip to it. Oh, that's not true. There's something I don't know about that. Just skip to it. The faster you can train that muscle, that as soon as you have this FOMO, just slow down and realize that you don't know enough. 3, it takes time to get good. There's no one who's good at anything that was immediately good at it. And the people who are immediately good at it, I remember telling a professor, I was like, I've just naturally been good at languages. He was like, when you were a kid, did you have multiple languages in your household? I was like, well, yeah, I'm bilingual. And he's like, what are you even talking about? Like, you literally started with that. So of course languages are easier for you. And so the thing is that the people who have things that come naturally to them, they just only came because they forgot the work that generalized to the new skill. Once you realize that it takes time and repetition to get good, then you also realize that the sooner you start, the sooner you get. And don't stop until you do. So let's assume you act with urgency, right? You've gotten that done. You've moved end of week to end of day. You moved end of day to end of this hour. You moved end of month to end of this week, and you've massively increased the speed that you execute. Well, then you start running face forward into the fact that things are going to get really hard really fast. And so I will tell you this one is that hard is for now, not forever. And so The good thing about bad times is that they end, and the bad thing about good times is that they also end. And so whenever you're going through a good season, it's also a good reminder that this too shall pass. And so what ends up happening is that when you're in the hard time, that can give you that necessary respite. It can give you the end of the tunnel that you can look forward to. There's only 3 outcomes. You either quit, it gets easier, or you get harder. So think about that, because no matter what, it always ends, but you only lose when you quit before you see it through. Because 2 out of the 3 outcomes get easier. Either it relents, the outside circumstance gets easier, like the hard thing moves, or you become harder, and then by extension, it no longer feels hard for you, which I'll make this real for you. Right now, think about the problems that you were stressed about 5 years ago in your business, right? Think about the things that you were dealing with, what you were stressed about. Now think about you trying to solve those problems today. It's probably a joke to you now. You'd be like, well, yeah, obviously. It's not that those things became less hard, you became better, but here's where this gets really interesting for me. It just means that nothing is inherently hard to begin with anyways. We are just always inadequate. For me, I remember when I had 5 employees and I was like, man, it's so many people to manage, or, I was like, where am I gonna, I have to manage cash flow. How do I do that? Or like, how am I gonna get new customers? Like, how do I sell? I can't sell really expensive stuff. Like, what if someone gets upset, if I charge more, right? What if someone finds out I charge this much, as though it's like something wrong? Like, all of these things are just irrelevant to me now. Just so silly. Though for me at the time, they were difficult. And I can only imagine how inconsequential the problems that I deal with, growing hopefully $3 billion companies right now within the portfolio, compared to what Elon deals with having 6 multiple $100 billion companies. And I compare myself to that, so I can always feel like I have a long way to go. If you are a business owner and you're making, you've got a legitimate business, you've got employees, revenue, profit, et cetera, and you'd like to see how we grow companies, every month at acquisition.com in person at my headquarters, we hold basically 2-day workshops where my team, my actual director of marketing, director of sales, director of media, all of my team basically works with businesses to just help them grow. And it's a cool way for us to meet new companies. That kind of builds our pipeline on the investment side, but it also just provides value to you guys. And so it's kind of a cool win-win. The reviews are exceptional. So the link is acqletters.com/Vegas. You can go there and you can have a time with our team. They'll just ask you a couple questions, make sure the business makes sense.
Like some of the work.
If so, then we'll invite you here to Vegas and have a
so
party.
used to listen to stuff at the speed that.
I encourage you not to party, at least till afterwards.
Yeah, just going
beyond that, let's get back to it. But let me give you one thing that'll also give you a little bit of hope about these hard times. Is that these hard times are also your best times, but only in reverse. And so let me explain what I mean by that. Think about the times when you were younger and you were in love and you were poor and you're like, man, those were the good old days. The thing is that when you were in that moment, it was stressful. You didn't know how you're gonna make ends meet, how you're gonna make rent, where you're gonna get food, whatever it is. You have these hard times, the hard times that you go through today, but these hard times become the good old days. And so we only see the truth when we look back. You have to go through them to get the perspective. And it's something that I try and remember on a regular basis, that I'm going through the good old days. And if they're the good old days in the future, they might as well be the good old days today.
Maybe you get used to it.
So
I think a lot of people
tell you a little bit about
speed.
what it feels like throughout this entire process. Because if you were consistently growing, you were consistently in pain. That's why they're called growing pains, not growing joys. And if you have stress from growth, remember the alternative is that you can have stress from stagnation and you can have stress from decline, which fundamentally means that hardness and stress is a fact of life. You will always have stress, you will always have problems, and the largest problem of all, the largest stressor of all, is determining that having problems is a problem, is that being stressed means there's something wrong with you. But being stressed just means you're alive. Having problems just means that you are actually doing something. I'll tell you this story that I think can drive this home. And I think this is the path to fulfillment over comfort. So imagine you talk to the creator of the universe before birth and pick the person you get to become. You say, I want to be the most courageous. The creator replies and says, well, then I will give you monsters to terrify you so that you can conquer them. And you say, well, I want to be patient. The creator replies, well, then I will make you work harder and longer so you can learn to wait. So then you say, I want to be wise. And the creator replies, then I will give you failures that will crush your spirit so you can learn the value of judgment. You then say, sounds like a rough life.
I think
Can you give me a good life? The creator replies, just like you measured the quality of the blacksmith by the strength of his steel, I measure you by what you are at the end, not the fire and the hammer to make you. A good life isn't a life that's easy. A good life is a life that makes you into a good person. And that myself is a hard life. And so I remember when I sold Gym Launch, there was a year that I more or less took off. I had all these kind of existential crises that I was going through because all I'd been doing was just working. And then I hadn't put my head up to look around and smell the roses per se. The problem that I had was that when I was smelling the roses, I was miserable. I was very sad. And the sadness for me came from the thing that I had that was most reinforcing my life was the work that I was doing. That was the thing that I enjoyed the most. And so not having that actually created a huge loss for me. And so then I had to create what am I doing? Why am I here? Right. And so for me, that was when I created the hypothesis, or at least the thesis I had for my life, was that hard work is the goal. Is that nothing left in the tank, which I got from Jesse Itzler, which I love. Emptying the tank every day is the point. Because for me, those are the days that when I look back are the days that I feel the most fulfilled on. In the moment, you feel tired, you feel exhausted, you feel like you're bored, you feel like you don't want to do another repetition, you don't want to do another 2 hours, but another 2 hours, another repetition, another edit is what is required. Not what you want, but is what is required. And if you have a little bit left in the tank, and you don't know if you have a little bit left in the tank until you empty it, until you physically can. And so I think about that steel that we're trying to make, and the only difference is that we are both the steel and the blacksmith. And so the creator in this would just give you the fire. And either you can stand far enough away from it that it just keeps you warm, or you can go into it and you can hammer out the impurities so that you can just become better and better and better and stronger. And if you're watching this and you would like to start a business, but you're not sure where to start, I am a co-owner of School, and we just started the School Games. And right now we're giving $100,000 away in cash or a Cybertruck to the person who builds the biggest community on School in 30 days. And so School is just a community platform that helps people start businesses. And right now, 1 out of 2 people who start a paid community on School make their first dollar online. And so you're like, okay, well, that's cool. And right now, on average, the average paid community owner makes $1,360 per month. So this is not going to be the thing that makes you, a billionaire rich, but it can help you get started, which is why I invested in a company. I spent 4 years looking for something that can make the easiest kind of starter business for people to get going, especially starting online. The reason that we have this success rate, right? The reason that we have this very high success rate is that I meet every single week and onboard new people. So every Monday, I'm on a call and I onboard, right now I think about 300 people per call. that are on there. And so I answer questions live with everyone on there. And it's a lot of times the same basis. So while the calls are relatively small, I'd encourage you to come on. On top of that, I have kind of like step-by-step instructions of exactly what you need to do that the best community owners have done. And so you can just model the behaviors, just do this stuff. I don't explain psychology and triggers and NLP. It's just like do this stuff, and this is what yields this outcome, right? And then finally, we'll give you the entire platform that basically makes all the tech really easy. And so right now we've got people who are in foreign countries who don't speak English. We've got, I think there was a guy who won the game who's 15 years old. So like, I'm telling you, it's not rocket science. Like we've really taken a lot of effort to make it as simple as humanly possible. You don't need any other software to make this work. And so if that sounds all interesting, the best part about all of this is that you can start absolutely free. And so we have the course, we have the calls, we have the platform, and we also have the community of other people. All right. And so you can start for free, you get 14 days. You can click the link, which is right here. Oops, other way around. School.com/games, start free, and hopefully I'll see you on the other side. And so a big part of why this is so hard is that so few people want to go into the fire, right? And the fire could be entrepreneurship, the fire could be content creation, the fire could be starting a new product, the fire could be doing outreach and knocking on doors, or quitting your job and starting another job in a completely different industry. That's the fire. It's the thing that other people aren't willing to do. And they tell you not to do it because it helps them justify the risk that they chose not to take. It helps them feel better about the risks they aren't willing to make. I remember thinking about this at long length when I was younger, and I thought about the word exceptional, right? So buried in the word itself is the key point, which is that you cannot expect to be accepted if you want to be exceptional. To become exceptional, by definition, you have to become the exception, which means you have to be unlike other people. You have to do what they don't agree with. If they agree with you, if everyone agrees with you, you can be sure that it's the wrong path. When I quit my job, every single person in my life told me it was a bad idea. I graduated 3 years from Vanderbilt. I had a nice white-collar consulting job. I was set up to go to grad school, to one of the Ivy Leagues. I aced my GMATs. Like I was set up. I'd done the path. And so for me to quit and be like, I'm gonna be a personal trainer for minimum wage at a gym, that was not a happy news for the vast majority of people that I knew. But the thing is that I've had those conversations multiple times in my life. When I ended up leaving the gyms and started the turnaround business, every person was like, you finally made this thing work. You finally, now we finally agree with you again. And it was right at the point where they accepted me that I was like, you know what? I think I want to do this other thing, and I'm gonna sell all these gyms for basically nothing in 90 days to then start new. And they're like, but you spent so long on this. And they see sunk cost fallacy. And the thing is don't listen to the people who are closest to you. Listen to the people who are closest to your goals. And so a lot of people like to think about how they have these mentors and these heroes, but the most important group is your reference group. And your reference group is who you compare yourself to. But the thing is that people think they compare themselves to their mentors and their heroes, but they don't. Who you compare yourself to is who influences your decisions. So the voices you hear, the voices you listen to when you're about to make a big move, those voices are your actual reference group. And if those voices are not close to your goal, you should not listen to them. If anything, sometimes the best advice in the world is do the opposite of whatever it is that they did to get in their life. If you don't want what they have, don't listen to what they say. Even when you're an entrepreneur. So let's fast forward a couple years. So there was a point where I started the outbound team. So this is gonna sound super tactical, but I'm gonna zoom out for you. So we at Gym Launch we were all paid ads for the most part. I made content, I had a book, like there were things that were out there. But still 70% plus of my new customers came from paid ads. And I knew that if I wanted to sell the company, I would have to create a second acquisition channel that was very different from the primary ones, so that I could create more stability. So you don't have one point of failure within the business. And so I remember reading this book about how to set up outbound, and it said it will take a year. And I said, I'm really good at marketing, really good at sales, it'll take me 12 weeks. And it took 12 months, like the book said. And so when I walked through that, what was interesting is it took 90 days for us to get our first sale. And the whole time I'm investing in this team, I'm investing in software, I'm investing in training, consulting to like learn how to get all this stuff going just to get our first sale. But that's not very good for the amount of time and effort we put into it. And then 3 months, after that, we started getting a couple sales trickling in, still not a lot. And I actually had almost like an intervention from my executive team that were like, hey, we think this is a shiny object. They're using my words against me. They're like, we think this is a distraction. It's not, yielding a result for us. I think we should, cut our losses and move on. And I kept thinking to myself, like, this is what hard feels like. Like, we have to just keep inching our way through because we have made sales, which means we just need to get more efficient at it. And then we did another 6 months, and then we got to the point where it became 50% of revenue. But here's the thing that you don't see. And so whether you're starting a new acquisition channel like I was, you're starting paid ads, whatever, is that if I tell you in 1 year, I could double your business, right? Let's say you have to pay me $100,000, right? And in 1 year, I will double your business. Many people will probably be like, yeah, sign me up, I'll do it. Maybe I'll take a loan, but even for the 100, like if I know I'm gonna double my business in a year, I would do it. Okay. But then what happens is month 1, they drop 5K and then they lose 5K. And then month 2, they lose 5K again. And then they say, ads aren't for me. Outbound's not for me. But the thing is that the way it actually feels is that you lose 5K, you lose another 5K, you lose another 5K. And then all of a sudden 1 month, you make 25K. And then the next month you make 50K. And you make all of this back and some, but it happens all at once. And so there's a saying on Wall Street that I like, which is it happens slower than you expect and then faster than you can imagine. And they talk about that when it comes to market drops and market explosions. It's like we should be crashing. It hasn't adjusted yet. It happens slower than you expect and then faster than you can imagine. And so you have to be willing to forego that period of time for a long time, understanding that you just want to make progress. And so I think the thing that separates masters from beginners is that masters have more ways to win. So you can measure your expertise in anything by the ways you can measure, equaling the number of times and ways you can win. And so if you're an expert at making videos, then throughout the entire process of a really long project, you have many wins on the way. You know all the little progress markers that occur to create some big outcome. And you approximate those little progress markers for the ultimate goal at the end. When you're a beginner, you only see the output. And all you see is I'm doing stuff and nothing is happening. But you just aren't able to mark progress well. And so if you want to increase your expertise, then you need to increase the number of ways you can measure so that you can increase the number of wins you have in a given time period. And by the way, that is what makes you enjoy your work. And this is how the work itself becomes reinforcing. And so in order to develop that expertise, you have to have education. And people think that education is expensive, but the only thing more expensive than education is not being educated. And so I would say that in my life, I spent more money than I could possibly imagine simply trying to acquire skills and relationships that would make me better. To give you an idea, I think the most expensive thing that I bought for this is not including me messing stuff up and losing tons of money, but I actually wrote a check for it, was $350,000 to have a dinner with a guy who was worth $7 billion. And I got exactly what I wanted from that dinner, and it was incredibly valuable for me. And he kept saying no. I sort of offered 100K, and then 200K, and 250K, and 350K. And when we offered 350K, he said, fine, I'll just have dinner with you. And he didn't ask for the money. But I think he was just seeing that I was willing to spend the $350,000 for it. And so I've spent so much money for 1 hour, 2 hours, anything to gain context. Because I heard this close, and you've heard, if you've watched my channel, you've heard this before, but pick whatever number your income goal is, right? Let's say it's $1 million a year. And let's say you're currently making $100,000 a year. If you value that $1 million goal, the value of the $1 million per year, what's the price you put on that education? The value of that education is the difference between where you're at and where you want to go. And so that's why if I want to become a decabillionaire, then I should be willing to pay everything that I have in order to gain the skills, the experience, the knowledge in order to get there. And so if there's a way that you can spend $50,000 in order to learn $1 million per year skill set, then every year you don't do it, you lose $950,000 that you would have made if you had made that investment. And so the key point here is that we use poor people language when we talk about education, when we should be using investor language, because it should be an investment in an asset. And the asset just happens to be you, and you can't sell it, but you can invest in it and you can grow it. If you think about investments, you'll never say an investment is expensive. There's just a cost and a return. But if someone says there's a $100 stock or a $1,000 stock, it could be expensive relative to the return. But if the return is supposed to be good, then no one says that that amount of money itself is expensive. It's just what the cost is for the return. It is the investment. And so if you think about education that same way, it always has to be framed in terms of what you get for it, not how much it costs. It's not about how much you make now, it's how much you're going to make and how much that's worth to you. And for me, whatever my delta is what I'm willing to pour into that without hesitation. And so for the first I lost everything at year, 6 of my entrepreneurial journey. And I put all of the extra money that I had right back into learning more stuff. And so even though I made profit, my biggest expense was me. But it wasn't on my living and my lifestyle. It was on my education and my network and my surroundings and the skills I wanted to learn. Of course, the workshops, the seminars, the coaching programs, all the things that I did. I'm a product of that world, despite the fact that I think that world overall has a lot of shitty people. I still learned a lot. And you can learn just as much by learning what not to do and say, I would never do that, or treat someone the way that person treated me. Because the best students never come out negative. So really, think that I have always been the top performer in every single program, coaching, whatever I have ever done. And so the process that I use is, number one, do everything they tell you to the T the first time. Then take what works and toss the rest. You can learn something from everyone, but only take in that which makes you stronger, which is a quote that I have from Harry Potter, the Sword of Gryffindor. But I love it because it was enchanted to have this spell that it would only take in things that made it stronger. So it took in the Basilic's Venom, which allowed it to kill, the Horcruxes later on. But I like to see myself as that sword, is that I continue to invest, I continue to put things into the steel, but I only take in that which makes me stronger. So a lot of people have these negative experiences with coaches, consultants, vendors, whatever. And I just like to think of myself in what way will this make me better? And so by instead asking that question rather than enumerating the many things they could have done better or the things they did wrong, simply saying there is something that I can learn from this. And there is something in this experience that will make me stronger. And that frame may have been one of the most valuable frames that I've had because I, like you, have spent plenty of money on things that have, quote, not worked. But I still learned enough from them and oftentimes what not to do that allowed me to then see what to do. But before I ever did that, I had to do the first 3 steps of that, which was do everything they said to the T the first time. And if for whatever reason it did not work, I would then use my other skills to patch the difference so that I could find a way to make it work. And by the way, if they have a success story, which they usually do because that's how they sold you, is that you find that person and figure out what they are doing that is lacking in the education that the person who's teaching taught. Fundamentally, if you ever buy something where there is somebody who has been successful, then it means there are activities that yield success. And the discrepancy, I'm going to show this to you visually because I think it's important. So let's say there's a bridge, right? And you've got, here's money and here's you, okay? So you've got this path that someone shows you how to do. So you paid money and they give you these little bricks here, right? They give you these little bricks that you paid money for. And maybe these bricks, you had to pay different vendors, different amounts of money for each one of these bricks, but you still haven't made money yet. The thing is that there's a gap here. And the reason that some people are successful with some people's programs or implementations and other people aren't is because that the people who already bought that brick from somebody else before that brick isn't missing. And so if you see the education you have as these bricks on the road, then you wouldn't say that the foundation of a house is in some way a ripoff. You would just say it's not a complete house. Now, if they sold you the expectation that you would have a house, sure, you could be upset by them, but they still helped you build a foundation. And so it's the same people who get upset saying, oh, I learned arithmetic from Mrs. Glass, but then when I found Mr. Hardwick and he taught me calculus, she only taught me arithmetic. She's a moron. You wouldn't say that. But for some reason, people talk about the basics of business the same way when they become more advanced. If someone taught you how to do outbound and do warm outreach so they can sell your first customers, and someone else later teaches you how to run ads, well, you probably learned how to work the leads from the ads that work for you because you learned how to do outbound. You probably learned how to sell because you learned how to sell strangers. And so when you did the ads, it worked for you, and then somebody else who did that same exact implementation didn't have the bricks that you had, and they never got the dollars that came across. And so whenever something doesn't work, it doesn't make you any better by saying it's their fault. And fault also only matters in the eyes of the law, which you're not going to sue anybody anyway. So who gives a shit? The only thing that matters is whether the outcome happens or not, which is under your control because it means that you simply have a discrepancy between where you are and where you want to go. And so a lot of people would then say, sure, Alex, it's easy for you to say you're a white guy. You're right. Cool. So just don't watch the video and move on. But for everybody else, you've got connections, you've got money, you've got looks, you've got intellect or intelligence. These are all great. But you can beat all of these. You can beat somebody who has all four if you have one thing, which is the desire to improve. The insatiable desire to improve. No matter where you start, if you have this, it's hard to beat someone who improves every second of every day without stopping, without giving up. And so I have met people who have connections, money, looks, and intelligence, and they do not people who have an insatiable desire to improve, who do not stop. And so if you think about it like this, if life were a race where at the end you die, so gotta finish first, right? There are people who may start at different parts of that race. But what is not measured is the speed that you can move. And so I don't know if you've seen these clips that have gone viral in the NFL where they have like one of their wide receivers start like 20 yards behind a fan and they have to race the length of the football field. And then the wide receiver will usually catch up, like talk to them and then just speed right past them. And so it's far less about where you start because that's where a lot of losers will define themselves. They'll define themselves by what happened to them rather than what they made happen. And somebody else may be here, but it only matters if you think that there's fairness. But I don't believe fairness is something that exists in the universe. And so I don't hold it as an ideal that I proclaim must exist. But there's simply a starting point and a rate of progress. And the starting point you can't control, but the rate of progress you can. And so control what you can control. If education is a change in behavior, that's what you do. If you become educated, you do something different after you learn something. Then intelligence is rate of learning, which means that you can in a very real way influence, it's the rate of learning, the speed of learning. You can influence how quickly you move along this race independent of where you start. And you'll also note that the person here has no influence on what this person does. These two people are independent nodes. The only reason that this person gets upset is that they think it's not fair. And if you just eliminate fairness from your vocabulary and think only in terms of what do I need to do, then it eliminates a lot of the distraction that keeps you poor. So if you recall from the very beginning, lazy people get distracted. They focus on distraction. And one of the biggest distractions is it's not fair. It's not fair. I shouldn't have to. I should get. I should. It should. Things shouldn't. It's all shoulds. And I will tell you that should, in my worldview, should not exist. Because should creates expectations of an uncaring universe. It says that you demand something, and I promise you that the universe will win. And so all you have to do is watch like baby seals just get immediately eaten by orcas after like a mother laying there on the ice to be like, wow, life isn't fair. I'm sure that seal could be like, it's not fair that my babies were literally eaten in front of me. Tough, right? Tough. They have mammal brains. We can see that they got some feelings, right? And so if we go back to the sword of Gryffindor, does demanding that it should be fair make you stronger? Does saying that that person started further ahead of you in any way benefit you? No, because your actions are entirely independent from them. And so the only thing that that does is actually delay your speed of taking action. It makes you dumber. Because if we define intelligence by rate of learning, then it means it takes you longer to learn. It makes you stupid. And I think that that's why people stay here for a very long time. And many of them never leave. So what are the things that bad entrepreneurs talk about with good entrepreneurs? Is one of the excuses they'll make is that they will make preference excuses. They will make trade-off excuses. They will say, this is not worth the price. In which case, fine, but don't also want the thing. So for example, privacy is the price of fame. Loneliness is the price of ambition. Pleasure is the price of discipline. Novelty is the price of loyalty. Discretion is the price of trust. And so many people want the benefits of these traits, but can't afford the cost or the price. They're not willing to be discreet, but they want someone to trust them. They can't hold someone's secrets. They want somebody to be loyal to them at home, but then they want the thrill of the new relationship. They want the benefits of discipline, of consistency, but they can't trade the pleasure in the moment. They want ambition, but they're not willing to pay the price of being lonely, of being the exception. They want fame, but then all of a sudden they are startled when they realize that they have no privacy. And so each of these things are trade-offs. And if you're not willing to make the trade, fine, but don't bitch about it. And I think part of it is that we have a hard time understanding to what degree. And so each of these ideals are not binary. It's not discretion, it's how much discretion you have. It's not novelty, it's how much novelty. It's not pleasure, it's how much pleasure. It's not loneliness, it's how long. And it's not hard work, it's how hard do you have to work and how long do you have to work. And so most people, and I think this is where a lot of the complaints come, is that they believe they're doing 10 out of 10 work, right? They're like, this is 10 out of 10 hard for me right now. But they're actually only doing 1/10 of the amount of work that it takes to get to this goal. And so they might be doing a 10 out of 10 work for a 100K goal, but they're doing a 1 out of 10 work for a $1 million goal. And I think a lot of that work comes down to being able to accurately assess reality and see what your actual discrepancies are and realize how much work you really have to do in order to get good at every one of those discrepancies. Because most outcomes don't occur until you've met all of the conditions, like a pipeline. All right, so let's say you've got this pipeline here and you've got these valves. These are the valves, you've got this water that's coming here, and let's say once you get all the way through, the water comes out the other side. These valves have to open. You have to open this thing, open each of these valves, and let's say you've checked off 3 of the 4 boxes. The water's still gonna be stuck here. You're still not gonna get the water through. And so the thing is that as much as you work, and you're like, but I did that, and I did that, and that didn't work, and that didn't work. It may have worked, it just might not have met every condition to get the outcome. And so if you think about life and outcomes that way, it gets a lot easier because it stops being emotional. You can simply say, there's a condition that I haven't met, and I have to figure out what that condition is. Rather than proclaiming that the universe isn't fair, or that you started further back, and that's why your effort hasn't resulted in it. Maybe this person only has to meet 3 of these, and you have to meet 4. Okay, well then I guess that means that you're gonna be better than them. Why is that a bad thing? It means that you're gonna develop more skills to achieve the same goal. Great. If the end of this life is that you are the steel, you are the thing that gets created, then you can't resent the hammer and the fire that makes you. Because you can't wish for strong character and an easy life. because the price of each is the other. So either people aren't succeeding because they don't understand that they have to make a trade that they're not willing to make, or the trade that they're currently making isn't sufficient. So they either think that they deserve to get the Nike shoes just for being who they are and think it's not fair and think that the store owner should just give them the Nike shoes. And look, all you have to do is look at the news. There's plenty of people who think that way and they go and try and take it, right? But that makes them a thief. That makes them significantly worse. It actually does more harm to them, in my opinion. But there are people who believe that. That's the worst. That's the lowest level. The next level above that is people who say, no, I'm willing to pay for the Nikes, but I'll pay 30. Like, yeah, but they're 300. That's the price. It's like, yeah, but I'll pay 30. They don't understand the extent of the trade-off. And then they complain that their $30 isn't good enough. It shouldn't be so expensive. It is what it is. There's a thing that Layla and I say a lot in chat. Like, it takes what it takes. And so if we want this thing, what often has to happen is you have to keep bidding. It's much more like an auction of a trade-off, because the real world, level 3, is that you see the Nikes and then you bid 30 and then you realize it's not enough. And rather than moan or put your thing down and walk away, you're like 50. And they're like 100. You're like, God. And so that is the pain, is being able to consistently reset the expectations and bid again and again and again until eventually you make it all the way through and you bid $300. You do get your Nikes, and then all of a sudden everyone says, must be nice to be born so naturally good. All you have to do, by the way, is watch some of my various first content pieces, and you think my various first content pieces are the podcasts that I made. Various first content pieces that I made for my gyms 13 years ago. And so it's like, man, you're so naturally good on camera. Watch those videos. Tell me if you think the same way. I had to take shots before the videos because I was so nervous about sounding stupid. In the 4th version, I would say like the highest version of this. So I'll break this down. So the 0 level of trade-offs is should. You just say you should get it for nothing. The next level is too much. So you say it's $30, but it's actually 300, and you say it should. The next level is bidding. So you bid. So you say 30, 50, 100, and you find out that you're insufficient. You keep going up. The final is source, which is where you determine the price. And this is often, in my opinion, where you create your reality. So it's continuing to hammer away at content, continuing to write drafts of the book before anyone else has seen it, because you are the one that holds the standard higher than everyone else's. Because no longer do you accept the approval of others as your litmus test. The market, for sure, in the beginning will tell you whether you're good or not. But Steve Jobs, Henry Ford, right? They would have asked for faster horses, not cars. Is that they demand more from themselves than anyone else does. And by setting that standard here, where everyone else is here, by actually meeting the standards of the market, you actually lower your own. And so this is where your standards become source. And this is where you get into rarefied air. And this is what the quote, rich guys, if you will, when we talk behind closed doors about what people don't understand, it's about holding the standard. And in my opinion, the person who should make the decision in every organization is the person who has the high standards, not the person who's most senior, not the person who has the most shares. It's the person who has the high standards for whatever it is. Our marketing should be at this level. If the owner thinks it's less, then that person should be the person who's running marketing. If somebody else thinks the product needs to be this good and someone else thinks it to be less, that person should be in charge, whether it's their first day or the 1000th day. The person who has the high standards is the one who should be making the decision. They should become source. And so when you get to that level, the only person you're making trade-offs with is yourself. You're the one who's determining, is this good enough for me to put my name on, rather than is this good enough for them to say it's good. And for example, J.R.R. Tolkien worked on The Hobbit for a decade, and he didn't even submit the draft. One of his friends saw that he'd been working on it for a decade and submitted it, grabbed it from his desk and submitted it for him to a publisher. And then it obviously became The Hobbit, and everything came after that. And so his standards were so high that he still didn't even think it was ready, but it was still so good that they ended up releasing it. Now, many of you think that you are J.R.R. Tolkien, but most of you are not. It's actually just very bad. And so once you realize how high your standards really have to be in order to be excellent, what you then have this daunting realization is that you can only do 2 to 4 things in your whole life because of how long it really takes to get to there. And so it's like, I want to be the best author in the world. That's not a desire of mine, to be clear. But if I wanted to be the best author in the world, then I know that that's going to take at least a decade of actually working hard every single day to get better. And believing that for me, because I'm special, I should somehow be able to be, my first book is an overnight success, and that is the thing that chains you to mediocrity. It's believing that it should be a different way, rather than accepting reality as it is and then changing your actions as a consequence. And so this is also why many people distract themselves. Because distraction makes you believe the lie that you can try 100 things and then figure out which one works, when the reality any of them can work, but none of them will work unless you pick one to work on. And then that is you making it work. The vast majority of things with enough iteration can become success. It's just that people underestimate how many iterations they need to have. It's 19 drafts, not 2. It's 500 minutes of editing to make the video, not 50. It's making 1,000 phone calls every week for 2 years, not 2 months. And so most of the times, it's just that our level of understanding, it's here. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people get stuck here. They say, I should be better. This should be easier. I've already paid a little bit. I said I was willing to pay 30. The Nike store owner won't give me the shoes. And then you basically are the same as this person. You just have to price that. I should, it should be, I deserve, I am worth. It takes what it takes, it costs what it costs. You gotta be willing to make the trade.
No matter what your goal is, you will suffer to achieve it. So pick a goal big enough it's worth suffering for. Here's how to achieve that goal.
Give me the next 30 minutes, and I'll help you make the most of your 20s and your 30s. So I made my first million when I was 26. A decade later, my portfolio company generated last year over $250 million in aggregate revenue. And I'm 36 now. And so in this video, I'm gonna give you the real world advice that I wish someone had told me much earlier. So number 1 is you wanna take asymmetric bets. If you're under 30, you have no reason not to go 100% all in on your goals. The downside is nothing, and the upside is everything. If you think about life as giving you kind of lottery tickets, right? You can scratch off a ticket, and if you don't win, then what did you lose? The scratch off ticket. But the thing is that when you have nothing to lose, you have nothing to lose, and you only have things to gain. And so the objective when you have as little as you can is to take as many shots as possible, because your downside is 0. right? And so it's the only time in your career where you can take more shots than anyone else. And so the reason, or the fact that people don't take shots, and myself included when I was younger, I was so afraid to take a shot, but the only reason that was holding me back was the belief that other people, who I don't even talk to anymore, would somehow judge me as a quote failure. You never actually start from scratch ever again, because every time after the first time you start from scratch, you start with an experience. So you still always net a positive. And so that's the beautiful thing about taking shots, is that you either get the big win, or more likely, you learn something. And then that learning compounds. And so the thing is that I had a misunderstanding of how success worked, which is that it's far more stacking many things on top of each other than it is nothing, 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 and then something works, right? And so if you imagine success like a bridge, right? So you're over here, and you've got this chasm that you have to get across, right? This is, let's say there's alligators here and lava and all sorts of stuff, right? And then there's you over here who's got, your big smiley face and you're happy and you're doing all the stuff you want. The thing is that I thought that I just kept wanting to jump over this gap over and over again and think like, if I just jumped hard enough, or if I had the right opportunity, that's what would do it. But more likely than not, it's really like you install these bricks on the path, and you keep walking, and it's like, okay, well I fall here, okay, well I'll fix this one later, and then you take a and then you start again, and you fall here, and then you fix this, and you keep going, and you fall here, and then you fix this, and then all of a sudden you make it all the way across. And that's what it looks like, or what the experience of kind of becoming the overnight success is, and that's why so many people talk about it, where it doesn't happen at all, and it happens all at once. It's not that it happens all at once. The actual outcome of getting a system to work all the way through, that is binary, but the process of building the system is actually very linear. I'm also not saying this from a position of like, even though I saw some success early in my career, I also started pretty early, and so I had 9 failed businesses, 9, before I had one that really worked. And so I bring this up to say that, like, I don't know what failure you're on right now. Maybe you're on 0 failures, you're on 1 failure or 2 failures, but you have way more failures in you. At the end of the day, like, one of the big realizations I had is that since life is an infinite game, and what that means is that there are games where you have a defined time period, and at the end you count the score, right? And then there's infinite games where the only point of the game is to keep playing the game. And so, like, the point of marriage is not to get married, it's to stay married. The point of health is not to get healthy, it's to stay healthy. And the point of business is not to get into business, but to stay in business. And so basically the only thing that you have to do to stay in business is to choose to continue to fight. And so once you realize that, then you realize that you become a success the moment you decide you are, because being successful is far more about being in the game, about being in the arena. And so when you're in your 20s, what you lack in experience, you have to make up for in effort and hours. And believing otherwise leads to a life of, honestly, well-deserved mediocrity. So if you're hearing this, you're like, okay, I got it. I need to take more bets, and I need to take maybe riskier bets because my downside is nothing. All right, well, which bets do I take? So number 2, don't follow your passion. So passion is vague, and so it's very difficult to say, I like this thing more than this thing. But what you can say is, I'm better at this than that. And so passion usually then comes from competence, not creates competence. And so we usually like things that we get good at, rather than getting good at things that we like, right? And so this is the thing like that I think confuses a lot of people. And so the other flip side of this is that enjoying something doesn't even guarantee that you're good at it, or that you're gonna be able to make money from it. And I remember my dad used to tell me when I was much younger, he said, listen, if I were following my passion, I'd be a bartender at a ski slope, right? He said, if you could just make money, he said, the rest of your life you can do whatever you want. And I actually think it was very practical advice for me, and I'm very grateful that I got that. The thing is that getting good at anything, you have to slog through this period where you're probably not gonna be passionate about it, because it's very boring, it's very monotonous, it's very repetitive, right? It's one thing to say, oh, I like ping pong. It's another thing to say, like, I hit 500 forehands and 500 backhands every morning and every night, right? It's a different level of dedication that you have to it, and that isn't gonna be something you're passionate about. You might like playing the game, but getting good at the game are 2 very different things, right? And so it sets this false expectation that I think ultimately harms more people. And I think one of the biggest reasons of not following your passion is that your passions will change as you age. I promise you, the things that I was passionate about when I was 20 is not things I'm passionate about now, and I'm sure the things I'm passionate about when I'm in my mid and late 40s are be different than things I'm now. Same as 50s and 60s. And so this idea that, like, I have to find this one thing, it puts a ton of pressure on that thing that it has to be perfect forever. And if it's not gonna be perfect forever, then why don't we be practical now so that we can give ourselves options later? So fundamentally, all we're gonna look for are things that you're good at that people already spend money on, because that creates a very high likelihood outcome of you creating something that you can exchange in the marketplace. Once you've decided on something that you want to get better at, you're already good at it, you want to get better at it, which is hopefully, maybe it is your passion, which would be amazing, but a lot of times it's not. The next thing is you have to get good at one thing. Think about the equal opposite of this. How would I get someone to be poor? I would get them to keep starting new things rather than getting good at one thing. And so do you remember that guy who got rich, drop shipping, day trading, buying crypto, and wholesaling all at the same time? Yeah, me neither. You have to focus. And it's arrogant to think that you can do multiple things at once and beat someone who does one thing with all their effort. You have to pick one thing and go all in, and then you become the one who's hard to beat. So I told you earlier that I had 9 failed businesses. Now, here's the part that a lot of people don't know. 6 of those I had at the same time. And so I like to tell people, like, oh yeah, I'm a CEO, I've got multiple companies, right? Like kind of the way I do now, but it's very different now, because the thing is that I actually have CEOs who run those businesses, right? Not me. Because you can only be CEO of one thing. You can only drive one thing. Now, I drive acquisition.com, right? But CEOs of each of the divisions, of each of the portfolio companies, like those are people who run their own profit and loss statements. And I didn't understand that. And so I had a chiropractor agency, a dental agency, a gym launch business where we did turnarounds. And then I also had 5 gyms of my own at the time. All right, depending on how you want to start, but I had 5 locations plus the 3, so I had 8. It's a lot. All right, it's too much. And because of that, I was stressed out of my mind. I was so spread thin, and basically I had lots of things that generated revenue, and I didn't make any money. The only thing that it fed was my ego, not my bank account. When did this big turnaround happen for me? Layla came into my life, and she was like, "Hey, you're clearly really good at this one thing. Why don't we just cut everything else?" And that's exactly what I did. It was the hardest period of my life. I just shut down all the other businesses but one, which also meant that I had to end partnerships with all these different other people that were relying on me, and that was hard. I'm not gonna lie, like it was not fun. Like these are people that I liked, but I had to make this decision. I had to cut off the life that I didn't want to have the life I wanted. If you want to impress people who are poor, talk about how many things you do. If you want to impress people who are rich, talk about how good you are with them. Like at the end of the day, your ability to demonstrate excellence is going to be the only thing that someone who is ahead of you will look at. And so you only fool the people who have no idea. And I'll be real, there's a lot of people who have no idea. So the thing is that this is where the whole imposter syndrome will start creeping up on you. because you're like, man, I kind of feel like a little bit of imposter. Because you are. You're misrepresenting yourself. You know you're not as successful as you pretend to be. And so if you want to eliminate imposter syndrome, just stop lying. When I say lying, people are like, I don't lie. If you present something in a way that you know is going to be perceived differently than what reality is, posturing, in my opinion, lying. You're misrepresenting. What you want to be able to do is state the facts and tell the truth. Period. And then if those facts and truth are not compelling and do not get you status, then change the facts and change the truth. Meaning, not that you lie about them, but you work so hard that the truth is compelling. And sometimes that takes time. But I promise you, the people who are all in on the imposter stuff, the guys that I knew that were, when I was in my 20s, who were kind of like hustle bros, whatever, a lot of those guys faded, and or they're still like jumping from thing to thing, kind of like pretending to be successful. But like I know that they're barely able to afford their house. At the end of the day, it's a choice that you have to make. Do I want to pretend to be rich? Do I want to pretend to be successful? Do I want to look like I'm successful? Or do I want to be successful? Which more likely is do the things that success requires, which today do not look like success. It looks like a very long string of failures, because you will be rewarded far more in life for your determination than your intelligence. But the problem with determination is that in the short term, it looks like a long string of failures until it works. Okay, so you're like, got it, I'm gonna focus. Now let me give you something that's gonna help you stay focused. Number 4, stop networking. All right, now this is a really, really important point. Now, it's not that I even have some big problem with networking overall. That's actually not my point. It's more that there are seasons of life. Right? In the beginning, you're in exploration. I grabbed this from Duel and I really love it. Later on, you get into exploitation, which is where you go all in, right? And so the thing is that in the beginning, you're tasting lots of stuff. You're trying to figure out what you are good at or have some proclivity towards. When you have that proclivity, then it becomes very clear, now is the time to cut everything else so that we can focus and go deep. Right? So you go broad in the beginning so that you can figure out what you to go deep on. The broad period that you're in is never the period where you're going to make money. Like this is the part you have to get. And I'll say from the beginning of when I started until I really graduated from it was about 5 years. It's less of a binary, more of a continuum. In the beginning you taste lots of stuff and then you just have to, because in the beginning you have to say yes to things. You have to say yes because you're so bad, you're so scared, you never want to say yes. But you learn to say yes a little bit and then you say yes more, and then you say yes more, and then very quickly you learn to say yes and get overwhelmed. And so the only way out of this yes trap is you have to start practicing to say no. And if you're like, wait a second, that means that I have to change what I do. Welcome to entrepreneurship. Like you have to learn, you have to evolve, you have to grow. So let me give you a very tactical example. So if you're debating between going to a networking event, right? Or like a lunch with some dude who's like, hey, we should collaborate, we should synergize, we should maybe trade ideas, let me pick your brain, whatever, right? And if you're picking between any of those things and working, choose the work. Because when the work works out, the people will still be there to take your call. But if you never do the work, no amount of networking will get the work done for you. And the bonus or negative bonus here is that if you don't get the work done, they're not gonna take your call in the future. And so they're willing to take the call today with whatever small amount of success that you have, but if you lose that success because you get distracted, they're not gonna take the call in the future. That door will be open, I promise. And not only will that door be open, 100 other doors will open for you if you win. During the season, losers congregate, winners isolate. If everyone was supposed to win, they would make podiums bigger. The top of the mountain isn't supposed to fit a lot of people. It's normal, the air is hard to breathe. And the thing is if all of this seems antithetical or different than what you've heard or what other people around you are experiencing, ask yourself, do those people have the lives you want? A great way to make a mistake is to ask someone else's idea about your idea who has no idea. When you make this transition from going from the exploration period to the exploitation phase, you go from many loser connections to a very few tight ones. I tend to be very transactional as a person, but I think we all are, and some people are just open about it. Everybody on some level does some sort of math in their head of like, this person in my life, I get more benefits than I have costs. But the thing is that if you want to raise the standard of your life, you have to raise the standard of the people who you surround yourself with. Because the fastest way to change your life is to change who you're friends with. Because that reference group is ultimately going to be what you compare yourself to. And so if you change who you compare yourself to, all of a sudden, you will create deprivation around the difference between where they're at and where you're at. The only way that people let you into circles that you don't deserve to be in is work ethic. There is no other way. It is the universal currency of respect across cultures, across time periods, across cohorts, across generations. An old man will respect a young man who hustles, and they will always be willing to give time to somebody who they think will execute. Like that was my secret, and it still is my secret. Like I know where people who are I punch above my weight class in terms of people that I'm connected with because they know that I'll do the work, and so they don't feel like they're wasting their time by helping. Because the thing is, a lot of people are actually very happy to help you. What they aren't happy to do is waste their time helping you when you actually don't help yourself. And so I've shed friends at every season of my life. And my close circle has always been very small, like very small. But the thing is that I think of my life in kind of seasons, right? And so you're gonna have friends for this season, and maybe you keep them for life, but maybe you don't. And I think giving yourself permission to say like, that was that season, and they were amazing friends for the objectives that I had then, and then my objectives changed. And it's not really fair to them to say, hey, I'm completely changing all the things that I'm doing. You have to still be friends with me. It might not make sense for them. And so not keeping this expectation over them has helped me kind of like free myself of that so that I can reinvest the time that I have in friends that I think will help me get to where I'm trying to go next. Okay, so if we're taking these big bets, and we're following something that we're good at rather than that we're passionate about, and we're not gonna get distracted, we're doubling down on one thing, and we're turning off these other things that in the beginning we were exploring, the little lunches, the little networking, because we know that if we just succeed at this one thing, all of those doors will be open. What do we do to make money? So let me give you a money rule. Money loves speed. And this will relate back to the asymmetric bets. By the time you have all the information, the opportunity is gone. Sometimes you just have to make your bet. And it's almost always faster to make a decision, then make a mistake, and then correct that mistake, than it is to painstakingly deliberate on the decision. If you know how long it would take you to fix something, if you're wrong, then just make your best bet, because you can always fix it later. And so said differently, if it takes you 5 minutes to decide and then 10 minutes to fix something, don't take 2 hours to decide, because you can just do it, and if you're right, you immediately are moving forward 5 minutes later. And if you're wrong, you're moving forward 15 minutes later. But either way, it's gonna take you less time than trying to assume that you're gonna know everything, because you're just not. You have to get a grip with uncertainty. Like, uncertainty is the job. Like, if you want certainty, don't try and go after your dreams. Because the thing is that the only way to go after a certain dream is to go after an old dream. And if you go after an old dream that's already happened, you're trying to fulfill something that will not happen again. And so you're either going to do the work or you're going to sit around wishing you'd done the work. And one of the things that took me a very long time to understand was that the things that dragged me down were not the things that I thought they were. Because the heaviest things in life aren't iron or gold, but they're unmade decisions. They're the things that weigh us down. They take up all of our attention, all of our brain power. And so right now, there's probably a handful of decisions that you know you need to make that you're just not. If you want to feel yourself go so much faster than you ever have, just decide. So few decisions in life actually are irreversible. Even the ones that people pretend are irreversible. Should I buy this car? Should I buy this car? You can buy it and then flip it. It's not like you can't sell it again, right? And so the real cost of the decision is the delta between what I can buy for and what I can sell for. Okay, well, how much does it cost me waiting 6 months to do this? Probably a lot. And if I need that car to or a truck so that I can like go to job sites or pick up clients or whatever it is, then like I am losing all of the time that I'm waiting to decide. And I'm telling you, where people slow down is at the decision process more than at the doing process. Doing usually takes very little time. It's the deciding that bogs people down in quagmire, right? They just get stuck. They feel like they're trudging through mud because they just hit these walls and all of a sudden there's no action because they're just thinking, they're planning. And I think I had to get comfortable with the idea that there's so many variables that I do not know that I just have to get comfortable with the idea that I just should test and learn, and I'll learn way faster than if I try and deliberate. And that has happened more times in my life than not. And I'd say that approach has served me with bigger and bigger decisions in life. Like I've made monster mistakes, but the bigger mistake that I would have made is just not being able to make decisions to begin with. And so you can move through life at 7 times the rate of other people by simply changing when you say you're going to make a decision from the end of the week to the end of the day. And if you want to move even faster than that, you can decide at the end of the hour. If you move faster than that, guess what you can do? Decide now. And so sometimes like my team has seen me do this. Well, they're like, okay, so we gotta make this decision. And people are always like, yeah, let's kick that to next meeting, or let's circle back, let's go offline for that. It's like, no, let's confront. Let's just choose. Let's pick. Which vendor are we going with? Which website design do we like? What headline are we going to use? What's the ad hook that we're going to go with? Just pick. That's why all of this stuff comes down to bets. If you want to have a future that you want, you have to get comfortable with risk. So if money loves speed, where are some of the money potholes? So number 6, pay off your debt. Now I'm going to hit you with something you probably haven't thought of before, which is there are many kinds of debt. There's obviously financial debt, but the biggest and most expensive debt is ignorance debt. It's the cost of what you do not know, but should. And to be clear, I still pay off ignorance debt every day. It's the debt in skills and knowledge that I should know to get faster and further to where I'm trying to go, but I don't. And so I have to just fail until I get this knowledge. The thing is that if I don't fail, I will never get it. I am willing to pay in looking bad, in money lost, in time lost, in people judging me, to make bets. And so I like this perspective on experts, which is that an expert is just somebody who's made all the mistakes you can make in a very narrow field. You have to learn how to lose before you can learn how to win. And the first rule of losing is that you didn't lose, you just learned. You pay down the most expensive debt. So then the question is, if you know that you have to pay this debt off, why aren't you? And I think it's because you don't realize how expensive not paying it off really is. And so, know the price of inaction. Do you think that the reason that you're in the situation you're in right now is because you struggled to decide in the past? You've gotten all the way up to the edge, you've gotten all the way up to the precipice, all the way to the front of the line, and then you choose not to. And so the question is, how many times have you run that cycle? How many times have you thought through this decision and then not done something about it? And is the life you have you want as a result of those actions? Because maybe the best thing you can possibly do is maybe see this and then just choose to make that call, because not making that call has gotten you where you're at. If you genuinely believe that you're going to do this sooner or later, right? Make this bet, make this call, whatever, sooner or later, then you might as well do it sooner so you can start enjoying the benefits now. Because you're going to enjoy the benefits either way. But why would you want to delay the benefits of taking action? The real is because you want to delay the costs of potential failure. Real quick, I have the most amazing offer for you, which is all 3 of my books for free. Just cover the shipping. I think it's like $5 or $6 in shipping per book. You get the actual hardback shipped to you. And the reason for that is because, some of you guys may know, we have 3.6 million copies that were donated from entrepreneurs. And I'm doing my part to give the books away. But I'm also giving the other 2 books to anyone who want them, who choose to redeem it. All right. Last time I made this offer, it sold out in like 10 days. So I did buy a lot more books. So if you see this, go check it out, go grab them. These are obviously while supplies last, because this lives in the video forever. And if you get there and it's not there, then don't do so. All right. Back to the video. Let's say you have a reason why you haven't taken action, whatever that is. All right, just imagine in your mind like it's a visual thing. Realistically, it's probably 1 or 2 voices in your head, and you probably think about whose voice that is, and it might not be yours. And so, who is the person that you're choosing to not live your entire life for? Whose judgment do you care that much about? And so, I will tell you the story. I almost didn't sell Gym Launch because I thought that $46 million was not enough to impress a specific colleague of mine. Real talk. I was very, very hesitant to sell the company, and the main reason is because I thought that they would think that that wasn't that impressive. And when I thought about that, I was like, wow. I was like, and this wasn't family, this wasn't friends, this was just kind of a colleague that I respected. When I was able to really listen to the voice, whose voice does this belong to? And what are they saying? And most importantly, is that the person who I want to give control over my entire life? And once I saw that, I was like, well, that's ridiculous. I don't care about this. They're usually subconscious. Like, you don't notice them unless you listen for the voice, unless you name the voice. Am I really going to let John be the reason that I don't get married to this girl? Is Joe really going to be the reason that I don't raise my prices? Is Sarah really the reason why I'm not going to sell this thing? Ridiculous. But people do it, myself included, every day. And look, this isn't going to be easy, right? Building these skills, losing friends, taking bets, taking losses, you might find yourself stuck and then blaming your previous experiences, which is why, number 8, get over yourself. Everyone's childhood was difficult. Get over it. And if you want to win the award for hardest childhood, congratulations, I'll give it to you. You have the hardest childhood. You win. Feel better? Right. no one cares about what happened to you then, only what you can make happen now. And so the only person that's satisfied with whatever that reason is you. And everyone else calls that reason an excuse. And at the end of the day, do you want to get to your life and have everyone be like, you know what, he wasn't successful, but he had a lot of really good reasons. Wouldn't it be so much more powerful to say he had all these reasons he shouldn't have been successful, but was anyways? Like, those reasons actually give you even more fuel, because you become a stronger story to everyone else. Like, no one cares when the silver spoon kid succeeds, really. And so all of the reasons that you can normally tell yourself why you shouldn't do it are sometimes the best reasons why you should. If you had disadvantages, I agree with you. Like, you're right. It's harder to be successful if this thing happened to you, or if you're born with X, or you're in this gender, or this race, or you have this birth deformity, or you speak a different language, or you're born in a different country, or you had abuse, whatever. So the main point is, despite the disadvantage, you only have one choice. What are you going to do? You can take action anyway and become proof to other people, like you, your people, who are also born into your situation, whether it was abuse, whether it was your gender, whether it was your race, whether it was your country, and you can prove to them, or prove to yourself, that you can overcome it, and that they can overcome it too. Or you can do what the vast majority of people do, is that they protect their ego and blame and complain. And to be clear, this is not a pulpit. You can do whatever you want. I support your choice. Go you. But only one of those decisions is going to make you better. And likely only one of those decisions is going to get you closer to where you want to go. Because at the end of the day, here's the TLDR. Losers define themselves by what has happened to them. Winners define themselves by what they can make happen, despite what's happened to them. And so where some person sees an excuse, another person sees an origin story. Like, you look at every champion, every hero, every comic book, they all have hard pasts. And so you having a hard past, whatever that is for you, or some disadvantage, just makes you like every other superhero who ends up, changing their lives. And I actually love this. I heard this from Joe Rogan, so this is not mine. Every single one of us can today wake up like it's the first day of a video game. Like, you just got transported into this body, and you're like, okay, look around. I have a wife, I have some kids, I have a job I hate, or I have a business I don't like, or I have some bet that I have this thing inside of me that I know I can be more, but I'm not. You have all this stuff that's around you, and now you can choose. Like, everything else behind you, you can just have today be your spawn point. And so when you're in a video game, it's easy to just forsake all that stuff because you don't have this emotional connection to it. But the thing is that, like, the action needs to be taken either way. So whatever frame of mind you need to be in order to do it, then do that. All right, so once we get this head trash out of the way, then we have to get back to business, if you will. So what's the next thing that we have to do? We have to solve bigger problems. If you want to make more money in your 20s and 30s, solve bigger problems, right? If you want to make $1 million, you have to be willing to endure $1 million worth of pain. If you want to make $10 million, you have to endure $10 million worth of pain. And here's the thing, is that most people have never endured that. And so when they start getting into it, the thing is the nature of the pain changes. And so in the beginning, the pain is, I don't know what I'm doing. Later, the pain is people judging me. And later, the pain is lawsuits. And a lot of the pain is just not knowing what the hell you're doing at whatever stage of business you're at, because that never goes away. And so not knowing is a constant. So trying to solve for not knowing is silly, because it's never going to happen. And so this is why you have to get comfortable with uncertainty. You have to make uncertainty your friend. If we're going to solve problems, right, we might as well pick big ones. And I'll give you a great analogy that I got from Stephen Schwartzman, who's the founder of Blackstone. He said, big goals and small goals are usually just about as hard. A common VC saying is that having a really successful restaurant, you might have to work 80 hours a week and manage all these different people to have a really successful local restaurant. And you might also have to manage all these people and do all this other stuff if you want to build $1 billion unicorn. Both of those things are hard. And so if it's going to be hard regardless, you might as well go big. And actually, it's been that is a very helpful frame for me, because one of the beliefs that I have about business and life is that suffering is a constant. Like, I have to remind myself of this on a regular basis, which is that if we are growing, I am in pain. If we're plateaued, I am in pain. And if we're declining, I'm in pain, which means that I am pretty much always in pain. And so to think that there's something wrong with pain misses the point of how this works. It is a constant. And if it's a constant, we don't even need to think about it. It shouldn't be a reason to do something or not do something, because it's just always there. Competition for big goals, believe it or not, is actually much rarer. It's thinner air. People believe that it's so unrealistic that they don't shoot for it, which actually makes fewer people there to compete against. And so it is probably harder in some ways to have a local restaurant that is really successful than it is to have a big business. And what I found is that most problems are solvable, which means that most things are knowable. And the reason that you probably haven't gotten to where you want to go is because you haven't actually started trying yet. And so you're going to have to be obsessive about it. And I think one of the big things that I didn't understand was just how obsessive I was going to have to be. It is normal to not be like your other normal friends if you want to have extraordinary outcomes. If you think about the reverse, it wouldn't make sense if we do the same things as our normal friends and somehow get something different. It's a positive indicator. It's a green flag that you're living a different life than everyone around you. Like, I had a conversation with my EAs this morning. They were like, man, I feel like if you were a normal person, that's what they said to me. They're like, I feel like if you were a normal person, you would drive this kind of car. I looked at them and I was like, so basically, if I were not me, I would do things that not me would do. Right now, it would make sense that you're going to do things that normal people won't do, because you're trying to not have the same outcome as them. 10, obsession is the ticket of entry. It's the price of entry. And the thing is that obsession isn't really obsession. It's actually just trying, and no one else tries. Like, that's the real. Is that normal people call what I consider sane people to be obsessed. But sane people, which is what I consider myself, consider everyone else insane because they do nothing and waste their lives. And so we have to be comfortable with reasoning from first principles of, like, I'm only going to live here for not that long, and I'm only going to have a certain amount of hours to do the stuff that I want to do. Why on earth would I not do it because of some face noise that some person, some other, advanced ape is going to say to me about them having a preference about how I'm living my life? And so you can boil almost all insults or judgments down to this statement. And I think, like, I hear this, I translate it when I hear, hey, you do not live your life in a way that I prefer. So, like, you shouldn't, I do not live my life in a way that you would prefer. And that's okay, because that's why you live a life that you prefer, and not a life that I prefer. And that's why you live your life and I live my life. And so people just get so triggered by this. So when people hate on you, it usually means that they're jealous and believe that you are undeserving of some part of your life. And so to be clear, it's not that they're jealous of your whole life. They might be jealous of the attention you get. They might be jealous of maybe just the money you make, not the way you look. Or they might be jealous of the body you have, right? And they're going to be like, oh, you're too into that food, right? Or, hey, you work too much, or whatever the little snide remark is, right? But what they basically think is that life has unjustly given you the benefits that they believe they rightfully deserve. And they might be right, but life isn't fair. Here's the thing. People who obsess about work-life balance are typically mediocre at both. And so obsessed people apply their obsession to everything and just call it life. And they also don't consider themselves obsessed. They just consider everyone else unobsessed and just plain and banal. And so I get criticized all the time for work-life balance. People say, like, Alex, you don't have any hobbies, right? I don't want any. I don't want any. They're basically saying, yet again, you live your life in a way that I would not prefer. If I were in your position, I would live life differently. Right, and that's why you're not in my position. So why should I sacrifice the things that I prefer to do in order to do the things that I don't want to do? Right? Just to make your definition of work-life balance happy, which I don't accept. So like work-life balance is a wonderful goal. I have no hate for it. It's not going to happen if you want to be the best. Like you probably heard the work smart, not hard, right? That only works when you're competing against people who are not smart. If you compete against other smart people, the only thing you'll have left is to work hard. If you work smart, not hard, you will get beaten by someone who works smart and hard. And if I don't know about you, I would rather be that person. Because at the end of the day, I would like to just win. And that is point 11, which is work hard and smart. If you extrapolate out what a normal life is like, right? Maybe someone makes, $1 million, $2 million over the span of their entire career, right? 40 years plus. I think there's just a certain amount of work that must be done to generate income. And so what I would rather do is just take that 40 years and just cram it into 4, and then have the other 36 years of my life to do whatever I want with resources far beyond what I would be able to do there. And so I remember Layla had this very early conversation with me. I think it was our first date. She's like, I just want to help people. Right? It's like, that was her whole thing. And I was like, do you think it'd be possible for you to help people and to make money? And she was like, well, yeah. And I was like, okay, do you think you could help more people if you made more money? She was like, yeah. And in that conversation, she shifted from being what I would consider a bleeding heart of just like doing everything, like just trying to just help every single person. The thing is your resources are so limited. You can't do much. And so if you want to help a lot of people, it's like you got to learn the game. And the thing is, to win that game, it's like you probably have to outwork people, a lot of people, and you have to be called names by people who live lives that you don't like. I want to be very clear about this. When I say work hard and smart, it doesn't mean it's going to be exciting. So 12 here is accept boredom. Like, if you want to be creative, you must first learn to be bored. If you want to achieve a goal, you'll either have to accept boredom or pain. And the bigger the goal, the more of both you're going to get. I have this great visual in my head about how winning works, right? So you imagine you have this marathon, right, that you're running. So you've got the starting line here, right, start. And then you've got this big race, right? And then you've got a finish line over here. Ta-da, finish. Now, when you've seen a race, where do people gather? They gather here, and they gather here. So here's the question. Where does the winning happen? On your own. Because no one cheers for you not drinking for a day, or not smoking on a long drive if you're trying to quit, or not overeating for one night, or skipping out on going to the club with the boys. No one cheers for that. No workout or meal is ever impressive on its own. And so the reason so few people understand success, or at least achieve it, in my opinion, is that consistency never looks impressive in the moment, only at the end. Because if you think about how consistent, like, it's very difficult to visualize consistency, because you can only see someone do something once. Right? You see a snapshot of someone take a shot or hit a backhand. The only way that you can actually witness consistency is working with people who are consistent. Because the thing that you have to see is that person show up every single day. Like, someone can show a workout of me working out, and someone else might be like, okay, well, I mean, that's a workout. Maybe I should kind of work out like that. And sure, there's a level of intensity that might be there, or form and things like that, whatever. But the thing that people won't see is it's very hard to witness 20 years, because you have to be there for 20 years. And this is why I think so few people are able to internalize consistency, which is the most important success trait, because it's very hard to lose if you show up every day. It's very hard. And showing up every day is boring. And so if we're willing to accept boredom, the next thing that we're gonna have to be willing to accept is sacrifice. We have to give up some things to get others. And so, like, at the end of the day, like, all we have are trade-offs. We have what we have and what we want. And the question is, what are the things you currently have? Are you willing to trade for the things you want? And I think it's such a perfect way of thinking about it. Like, you have everything in your life right now that you're going to have to trade. Like, everyone trades. Everyone starts even when you're at 0. You have things in your life. And you have to trade those things for things that you currently want but don't have. There's no perfect way to live your 20s or your 30s, right? You either live them up and become an underskilled 30 or 40-year-old, or you work them up and become an underlived 30 or 40-year-old. You just have to figure out which you'd rather be and accept the trade-offs and know that there are no do-overs. And that's okay. And when we're really thinking about sacrifice, right now, no human will ever get more than 24 hours per day. We all have that, right? And so, fundamentally, everything that you spend your time on that is not you pursuing your goal, you are determining is more important than your goal. And so, if you look at what you did every single one of these hours, and then you actually surface it and say, you know what, watching Netflix, doom scrolling TikTok and Instagram, hanging around, doing nothing, surfing the web, or whatever it is that people do these days, that is what's actually more important to you, based on your behavior. And so, is it really a sacrifice to give that up for what you want? Because the thing is that a year from now, you're not going to look back on today and be like, man, I'm so glad, like, those clips that I watched really changed things for me. You probably won't even remember any of the clips that you saw. They did a great research study on this where they did short form versus long form even, and people remember like 11%, like 24 hours later. It was a tiny percentage. And so we have to accept that the things that we spending our time on, most of the time, is just wasting our time on. And so I think Seneca said this, it's not that we don't have enough time, it's that we waste the time we have. I come back to this, which is like, is it really a sacrifice? Or are you finally just saying, I believe this is my priority, and therefore all of these things that are not helping me pursue that, I'm now going to trade out for things that will help me get this priority. That's it. And to me, if you like what you're going to get, how would you not make the trade? And so I had this clip that went super viral from a podcast that I did yesterday. And the host asked me if all my books and all my tweets and all my emails and all my YouTube videos were all deleted, and I had to compress all of my stuff into 60 seconds, what would I say for somebody who's in their 20s and 30s? This is what I said. Figure out what you want, ignore the opinions of others, and use so much volume that it would be unreasonable to not be successful.
I put together the most valuable lessons that have helped me achieve more out of my life. Hopefully, they're useful for you too. Enjoy.
This is brutally honest advice for poor people. I've been there. I had to fucking pay rent every night. I would think if I didn't wake up tomorrow, I would be okay with it. And I don't want that for anybody. I get it. I was just going through all these old files yesterday, and I saw a goal that I'd written, which was to make $10,000 a month income. And so it was 13 years ago. And so like, I viscerally remember what that was like. And I know I was in so much pain during that time that I get it. And so like the reason we make this stuff is because I've been there, and I don't want that for anybody. You know, like I missed my 20s. Like I didn't have them, as people traditionally say it. You know, like it's weird because in today's like internet culture, like I started my first brick and mortar business, like store front. I was 23. Like I didn't know shit about fuck. Like I knew nothing, and like I didn't know you could hire employees. Like it wasn't a thought. Like I didn't know anything. And so like I cleaned, I did the billing, I did the sales, I taught the sessions, like I fixed the equipment, like I did everything because I didn't know you could. And I didn't know. I didn't have the money, frankly, to afford anything else. And so I get it. Like I get it. But to get out of that, you have to take steps. And the first step is saying that it's my fault. The second step is that you have to use what you have. And so, in the beginning, I was reading the self-help books and all this stuff, and none of them really hit for me, because a lot of it was like power of positive thinking and like affirmations and like all this stuff. The reason I make the content I do now, which has now almost become like a shtick, countering that is because it didn't work for me, and I'm not trying to speak to everybody. If that works for you, then like, awesome. Like people mistake me saying this is what worked for me with this is what I think everyone should do, and it could be further from the truth. I'm saying if what you have been doing hasn't been working, then consider this, which is that like I remember because I just read this yesterday. The intro in the book, I say, I wish I could tell you that the reason I was able to make it out of the gym was because I was like really passionate about changing people's lives, and I love fitness, and I love my clients' faces when they light up and they step on the scale and they lose weight and they're able to fit in their high school clothes again. It was none of that. It was just the sheer anger that I had at the idea of being wrong and having the people back home be right about everything. And I still can barely tolerate it. And so, I mean, I took, in some ways, and this isn't I don't know if woe is me is the right term, but like, I had an otherwise very successful career. Like, I was in a white collar job, and sometimes it's hard, like, I mean, hey, I don't know, I haven't been in the other situation, but taking a step down and humbling yourself to minimum wage after you did in a white collar situation, not easy. And I remember I had clients who walk in and be like, oh, did you go to college? And they were saying that patronizing. And mind you, everyone here, at least in this channel, knows that I don't give a shit. But they were saying it to basically like when I was gonna like write something down, like am I literate? And in those moments, again, it was like I could be right or be rich. Like I could try and humiliate them back because the pain of what they just said made me feel. They probably didn't even intend that. Or I can be like, yeah, I went to school. I'm very grateful for it. And like, so what are your goals? And I can just move right past it. And so you develop that skin because I had to fucking pay rent. And so, I mean, I tell stories about having a kid drawing marker on the wall while I'm trying to close his mom, and he's writing in permanent marker, and I'm trying not to lose my shit over the fact that I'm going to have to repaint the wall because she doesn't know how to parent a child. But I needed to close the card to pay for the paint. And so it's like I can scold the kid and lose the sale, or I can close the sale and keep my cool, and then eventually clean the wall. And so like you only get that stuff by doing it. And so if you're in a place right now where you don't have a lot, you only have one thing, which is time. And so you have lower leverage. I'm not gonna lie to you and say that you like there's this one play, this one secret. No, it's sheer brute force. Like you have to will yourself out of it. Like you have to do it's a huge amount of soul driving energy that you have to do outside of what you normally do. So it's like you have to live one person's normal life. You have to do your normal work, your normal job. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to clean, you have to do whatever else. And then the workday starts. So that is how you eat today. But you're trying to get ahead, and you have to eat tomorrow. And so you have to eat the glass so that you can take the pain today. And you're trying to take as much of the pain from tomorrow as you can today, so you can get ahead. And like even the concept of getting ahead, I think about this visually, which is like if you have this timeline of life that you can pull towards you, and it's glass in the beginning, and then it's slightly less coarse, and then less coarse, and then it gets neutral, and then it starts to get a little bit sweeter, and a little bit sweeter, and a little bit sweeter. But you have to get through that glass period where you pull it towards you. And I do have this theory that like on a long enough time horizon, if we could live 1,000 years, everyone would eventually be successful. But people wait too long and they die too early. And I say die too early on a long timeline. And so I have to live today and tomorrow and the next day, so I can live 3 days at a time, so I can get to my second and third life's benefits now. And so that was what, like, I remember the only times that I took off when I was at the gym. And one of the biggest things that I was grateful for at the gyms is that I moved across the country. And so I knew no one. I was in Huntington Beach, I was from Baltimore, like no one. And what would happen, so one of the gifts of that was that once the week was over, my Saturday sessions were done at like noon, my phone didn't ring. No, like, in some ways, very sad. Because like, no one wanted to see Alex, you know what I mean? Like, no one was inviting me out. But I was like, fuck, like, I gotta make this work. And so I'd sit there and I'd be like, how do I sell memberships? How do I market? How do I, everything, you know? But that was how I got ahead. And so I tell the stories of like, I remember when I stopped watching the Ravens, and I was from Baltimore, so that was like a tie to home. And so, Yeah, it's fresh for me because I just read the story yesterday. Oops, it's tough. I'll catch my breath. So, all that to say, the sacrifices that I encourage people to take are not sacrifices I did not make. And I don't say that there's no ways to get there. I'm just saying that this is the way I got there. And if this path works for you, then maybe it works better than what you're doing right now, which is I had a lot of pain. And so I tried to use it. I just used what I had. I was just angry. I didn't want to fail. And so I just kept going. And so there was no there just wasn't another option. And so I think that's what I would encourage people to think about. It was I didn't allow another option because the other option was just worse than dying. Because I mean, I've told this story before and things get hyperbolized, exaggerated, romanticized, whatever. But when I had my big consulting job, I was making good money and I had the approval of my peers and all this stuff. And I just didn't want to wake up the next day every day. It wasn't like I was trying to kill myself. It wasn't that. But every night I would think if I didn't wake up tomorrow, I would be okay with it. And so when I knew that was what I was going back to, if I didn't make this work, I had no plan B. I mean, I had plan B is that I would drive Uber and straight up my joke about that. But that was very much my plan B if I didn't make it work. I get grilled on social media for saying this because of fucking race wars. But there have been slaves for thousands of years. There were slaves in Egyptian times. There were Jews who were slaves. There were Persian slaves. There were white slaves. There were black slaves. Humans have enslaved one another, period. And I like to think of things in extremes because it allows me to think of what's possible. And so the idea that someone else at some other time in history has worked 7 days a week, every hour that they're awake, with the threat not of their own death, but of their children's death, because that's what I would do if I were trying to control somebody. I would take their kids and say, I'll kill them if you don't work. And guess what? It'll probably work. That capacity exists. And so I would think to myself, I would try and put myself in that frame so that I wouldn't get into the woe is me cycle and think all these things I could blame for why I'm here right now. Why isn't this working as fast? How is it that these guys are making more money than me? Why don't these people give me the respect I deserve? Blah, blah, blah. And just say, what can I do now? And then just every hour of every day, well, what can I do now? And so it was, I have to learn how to market. I have to learn how to sell. I have to go to these groups where other gym owners are. I gotta learn their stuff. I gotta go to these seminars. I gotta save up so I can learn some stuff. And that's what I did. And so that's how I got out of it.
That visual of life is this bloody game of tug of war
Yeah.
where most people their hand just gets
Yeah.
cut to keep holding off the rope is it's stuck in my head.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
It was tough. So the first $100,000 is the hardest. And I know that sounds like an unfathomable amount of money. It took me 5 years. I get it. So you just have to save it $1 at a time. That's what it is. Now, obviously, I talk about other things there are smarter ways to make money, for sure. If you can sell expensive stuff, you can just move the decimals. The thing is it is factually true. It is spiritually false. And I don't even believe in spirituality in general, but it is tough to sell a $10 million building and make $1 million commission or a $500,000 commission when you are broke as fuck. It is very, you would have to become a different person, which is why most people's first sale is not that. But is it technically possible? Yes. A lot of people watch YouTube and the internet for complex money-making skills, and they haven't even mastered showing up on time. And so it's they want to go straight to calculus, but they don't know how to do simple addition. But the thing is simple addition is foundational to that. And none of the other stuff will matter unless you can do the basics. But the basics doesn't make them less important. Usually they're the foundation of building, which makes them arguably more important. They just are simpler to understand, but not simpler to do. And I think that's the big disconnect a lot of people have, is that they think because they understand something conceptually, that they feel like they have already mastered the skill, which are two very different things. And so one of the most common traits that people who are poor have is that it's always tomorrow. And so they never talk about anything in terms of today. And so it's about starting tomorrow, the diet on Monday, next year, my New Year's resolution. It's always pushing off. So rather than delaying gratification, they delay pain. And so rather than taking pain now for pleasure later, they take pleasure now and pain later. And so they flip the equation. And so they're surprised when today is later from yesterday that they're in pain. Because if last week you were like, I'm starting my diet this week, then it is now this week, and you've delayed the pain to today. And that means that the body you have right now is the result of the delayed pain that you are now forcing yourself to endure. And so they're somehow surprised when the bill comes due that they pushed off from the past. And so the first lesson of getting out of poverty is 2 words. It's my fault. It's I have to own that. And I think my fault you can kind of extrapolate to right now. Not you basically have to own everything that passed to this moment. So all the pain that I've gone through, all of the Mondays that I've missed, all of the diets that I've skipped, all of the savings I haven't made, all of those are not my dad's fault, my mom's fault, my circumstances' fault, the country I was born in's fault, the zip code, any of those things' fault. It's just mine. And the thing is that people have this belief that because they have a strong argument for why it's something or someone else's fault, that somehow helps them. And it just doesn't. Because whatever you cast blame to is where you also cast power to. And so if I say, I can't succeed because my mom didn't love me, guess who controls me? My mom. And so if you also like replace my mom with a race, a gender, a political party, whatever the thing, like I can't succeed because of Trump's laws. I can't succeed because of the radical left, because of wokeism, because of whatever. You actually give that thing more power in your life than you give yourself. And so it's completely, the thing is that, and this is what's so deceiving about it, is it's very self-fulfilling, is that you get more evidence and you get more confirmation, you get more evidence, you get more confirmation, the more your life sucks, the more you're confirmed that you were right. But like, do you want to be right about the fact that your life sucks? Or would you rather, like I think it's an old Zig Ziglar saying, he said you can either be right or you can be rich. And I mean, it's simple, but this is what he was getting at, is that you can say, you know what, you are right. Your dad kicked the shit out of you your whole life and you don't have any confidence because he told you you're a piece of shit every day. You're right. But in order to be rich, you need to let that go. Because every day you say that I'm not successful because of this, it means because this now owns you. And for me personally, that realization that the thing that I hated most in the world, the things that I blamed for why my life wasn't the way it was, I was their bitch. And just realizing that made me angry. But through that anger, I was able to say, well, fuck them. Like, I will succeed despite the fact that my dad said this, or my mom said this, or Barack Obama said this, or Trump said this, or the woke left says what. Despite that, despite the fact that the chips are stacked against me, I will still win.
Why does saying my fault and taking that accountability begin to set someone down the path to make more money?
And so if we think about success in terms of layers, like foundations, right? The base level, like when you're digging the building where you put the hole and you pour the concrete in, the base of the entire thing is who is in power? Who is source? Because if it's anything but you in that base layer, all of the other things on top of them will topple down. It's a foundation of sand otherwise. You can't build on top of blaming other people. There's nothing that stands on it. You say like, I want to learn sales, but I can't learn sales because I didn't get hugged enough as a kid and so I don't like people. And so as long as you keep holding on to that, you have sand as your foundation. But if you want to learn how to sell, or you want to learn how to market, or you want to learn how to do whatever, until you say, well, it's my fault that I don't know it, and because of that, it's within my power to change it.
So it's not sales books, it's not meeting offers, it's not even your books.
At the very beginning, you have to accept that, which is the first two words, my fault, my responsibility, all me, I am source. And then once you can accept that one thing, and what's crazy is that one foundation is where 90% of people literally aren't. They're not there. They can't do it. The reason my girlfriend left me is because of this, not me. The reason I lost my job is because my employer was a dick. My boss sucked. Whatever, the economy. But it never serves you. Like, give me one instance, one example. This is to anyone who's listening to this. One example of when you blamed something else and it made you better. One. You can't find it because it's fundamentally not true. And so you cannot both desire to get better and also maintain blame. You have to pick.
When did this really hit home for you? Was it when you lost money?
No, when I was 19 years old, I had to write an essay about depression in an intro to psych class. And I don't talk about my mother very much, but I used to harp a lot. I was an equal opportunity angry person. I was angry at everybody. In other words, I blamed everyone. And so I blamed her for X, Y, and Z. And I remember having to write this essay on depression, and you had to do it from someone else's perspective. So you had to say how would the environment and their upbringing, things like that, contribute to the outcomes in their life. And so by writing the essay, true or not, to be clear, about my mother's upbringing and how hard she had as an immigrant coming here, getting beat up as a kid, getting beat up for not being able to speak the language, all that kind of stuff. And this was in the fucking 50s, so when it was more accepted to beat up foreigners, rather than let them in. Anyways, so she had a tough time, and so it made sense. And when I framed it like that, I was like, maybe she's actually a massive success given where she started. And so then I thought to myself, now mind you, I still wasn't over it, but it was in this process that the first thing that happened is when I went back home for fall break or winter break, I remember she said something to me, which would normally just be the beginning of some big fight. You get into these routines. Like, I'll say this thing that we both hate, and then we'll just get into a nice fight about it. And she said the trigger, and I was just like, I understand you. I'm sorry you went through the stuff you went through. And she just looked completely shocked, and then just started bawling. And so I was like, we're cool. You don't anger me anymore. And I think for the most part since then, that's been more or less the dynamic that shifted. But leading into that was also the idea that all the relationships that I had that I blamed for not working because of the dynamic that I had with my mother, I was like, I am giving her this power over my love life. Ugh, that's gross. And so I was like, well, I'd rather just say it's on me to change and not have my mom or parents at all involved in my relationships. And so that was me taking, it's her fault that I can't make these things work. I have commitment issues. I don't want to get close to people. I've been hurt before, blah, blah, blah. So okay, well, let's take it to the next extreme. Great, you're right. You'll never be close to anyone. You'll never have a relationship that'll last. You're right. Now what? I remember I was at a conference, and I had this lady stand up in the crowd, and I had just done a thing on I don't remember what it was, call it offers. And she stood up and said, let me give you 6 reasons why this isn't gonna work for my business. And so she went down her list, and I was like, So I got to the end of the whole thing, and she said, and that's why this isn't gonna work for my business. And I was like, you're right, you'll never be able to make this work for your business. And she looked at me angry, and she lashed back. She was like, yes, I will. I'll be able to make this work for my business for this reason, this reason. And so the thing is that If the victim frame is just taken to the natural extreme, you realize that you're right, you win the game. And by being right the entire time, you lose everything. And so it's one of these frames that I love. Dr. Kashi says this. He says you're 99% right, but 100% wrong. And what that means is like, for example, every time I bring a girl home and I want my parents' approval, I bring her home and they say, this isn't the one, this isn't the one, she's not good enough, whatever it is, every time. It's easy for them to say that because every single person you date, except for the one you marry, they are right on. And so they're 99% of the time they're right. And they're confirmed by saying that that person that you bring home is not good enough. Because every time, eventually you break up, oh, it's not gonna last. This isn't the one, it keeps going, right? But if you keep doing that all the way to the natural extreme, you're 100% wrong. Because you will be wrong eventually. And it's the same thing as like, I wanna start this business, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. The second one won't work, the fifth one won't work, the seventh one won't work. And they're right. But they're just wrong on the long enough time horizon because one of them will fucking work. And one of the girls or one of the guys that you bring home will be the one that you are going to be with. But it's so much safer for them to be right and right and right. And they get deceived by their short-term rightness, they miss the long-term wrong. And we do this to ourselves too when you're in the victim frame. I don't even like using the victim frame, but when you're in the powerless frame. You give the power away and you get to be right over, that's why it didn't work, this relationship won't work, this job won't work. It's not going to work this time either. Because you get to be right over and over again. It makes you feel good in the short term, but in the long term, you guarantee the loss.
I think there's also like social reinforcement. We love to complain about the weather.
It's literally the same thing as never investing. Like if you want to invest your money, right? And you have all this big pile of savings. If you ever invest, there's always the possibility that it goes down in the short term. It's just the nature of markets in general. But if you never invest, you guarantee that you will never get rich over the long haul. And so every day you could make this risk. You take a small risk, but you guarantee a macro win. So you take a small risk today, potential for loss today, for the guarantee over the long haul that it grows and it makes you money. But the flip side is you don't take the small risk of loss today. You take the comfort today for the guarantee that you get the long loss. And so many people flip their life to that same thing. Is that they flip the pleasure for today and they just forget the second half of this, which is pain for tomorrow. And that today is also yesterday's tomorrow, and we're living through the pain that you cast. Like you own this. And until you're like, this is my fault that I'm in pain today because the decisions that I put off pain for tomorrow, where today is tomorrow. When you're broke, every dollar means so much to you. And you want to see the dollars in your bank account go up. But I never made that my goal. I made the amount of money I made every month my goal. Because I saw that as my potential energy versus stored energy. Not to get, whatever, physics people, you get what I'm saying. And so I was willing to take that stored energy and reinvest it to take $5,000 a month in income to make it $6,000 a month. Because I knew that over a year, I was going to make 12. And so if it cost me 2 to make the 12 in income, I would make that trade every time. And so whenever I save up a small nut, now obviously, I've always been pretty good about spending money. I haven't had that habit. So again, foundations, first, it's your fault. Second, spend less than you make. Third, take all of the excess and spend it on making more. Because if you're making minimum wage, I'm going to say what you probably already know. You're not going to get hit. You're not going to save your way there. You're not. Everyone loves to tell the story of that one girl at McDonald's, but you know they don't tell the other 100 million people who work at McDonald's over the world who didn't make it. And the outcome they're talking about is she made $1 million over 4 years working at McDonald's. You can shoot for more. And so take the money you make, live on nothing, and the hard part is just swallowing the pride for the fact that in the short term, everyone's going to be right when they say that you're amounting to nothing. And that's the tough part. That's the glass that you have to swallow, you have to pull towards you. And there's just no other way. You have to learn the skills. Now, to be fair, YouTube didn't exist when I was doing this. And Instagram was a new platform. So all this stuff, the stuff we have today is crazy. These videos in this podcast, all this stuff didn't exist. I remember when podcasting came out. I was already a business owner. None of this stuff existed. But at the time, I just took all the money I had. And I want to make this point again, is that people think that the money is about buying courses and stuff like that. And you can. There's nothing wrong with it. I've learned a ton from a lot of stuff that I've bought, to be really honest with you. But I think that I've always had an amazing return on education because I always did it. And I think I always wanted to be the best student in every class, and I was good at school, and I just took business as another type of school. But part of the expenses that come into what you take that money for is experiments that fail. And so one of the things that happens when you're broke is that you bet on stuff and it doesn't work, and people feel like they're back at zero, but you're not back at zero. You're at where you were, plus 1 experience, plus 2 experiences, plus 3 experiences, plus 4 experiences. But when you have plus 18 experiences, all of a sudden, boop, you level up 1. You get experience points. There's a reason in video games called experience points. So you didn't trade it for nothing. You got an experience point. And then with enough experience points, you get to the next level. And so I think if you just even thought about it like that, it's not a loss, but an experience point. You could bridge the gap between your current income level and the income level that you want to get to. And then guess what? There's more experience points that you have to get there. And those experience points also cost more money. Because when you take a bet in the beginning, and when I say it costs money, it's if you run an ad and it doesn't work, it costs money. If you want to set up a Shopify store or an e-commerce store and you spend 30, 40, 50 bucks a month, whatever, it costs money. And it does, all of these things cost money to start. Now, mind you, it costs a lot less than it did in the 20s when you had to mortgage your house and guarantee that you'd win or you'd lose everything forever. So the bar has never been lower than it is now, but there still is a bar and you have to get over it. And I still think that the vast majority of the shit that people are trying to get over has nothing to do with the difficulty of business, but the first step, the foundation, which is it is my fault that I am here. And in it being my fault, I am the one who can get me out of it.
It sounds like in that stage 3 when you start experimenting and investing in that, and let's say that the kid who has a failed dropshipping experiment or starts a school group and they want to win the school games but they don't, their measuring stick for whether or not they're doing well shouldn't be how much money they make. Or should they be thinking about money at that point?
So the wealthiest people I know only think about skills. They think about what can I learn and then what can this skill get me. And so they will always take any money they can to buy more skills. And in the beginning, you have to buy all the skills yourself. Once you have enough skills that you can generate an excess of income, you can start buying other people's lives. And what I mean by that is like everything comes down to buying time. And so at some point, you're 10 years into your career and you have a handful of skills, but you can buy someone else's 10 years of skills by just paying them to do something too, so you don't have to learn all those things. And so you do need to get good at stuff, and then eventually you generalize to be good at people. And that's pretty much always the path for everyone.
Maybe the framing is like a lot of people who are wanting to make more money just don't know what the avenues are.
You know, so a lot of people who want to make money don't understand how money is made. And so it's made by getting it from someone else, and they have to give it to you voluntarily or it's theft. And so assuming you don't want to steal, then you have to give something to someone else first. And then by doing that, they give you money in exchange, which is why I love capitalism. It's a voluntary exchange between two parties. And both parties say thank you at the end because both parties think they're better off from the trade. And so the idea is what you want to be able to do is find something valuable to trade. And so you can either trade stuff, you can find a place where you can get stuff, and then bring it to other people where it's convenient for them, so they pay you more than you did when you had to go find it in some back alley. Because, you know, suburban mom doesn't want to go in the back alley to get X, Y, and Z, but you'll give it to her. Yeah, it sounds like an expensive drug, but well, there's a reason they make money. But anyways, the point is that you can sell stuff at a margin, and a part of that margin is going to be the convenience that you deliver them. And either you're selling stuff that someone else manufactures, or you create your own stuff. Now, if you're starting out, you're probably going to sell someone else's stuff. And I do think, I mean, I'm saying this right now, I do love the concept that the first thing you sell is not the last thing you're going to sell. And so learning to sell in and of itself, the best way to learn to sell is sell something. And that's why referral programs, ambassador programs, affiliate programs for different types of businesses, almost every business I've ever owned has an affiliate program. It's great to enroll in those. I'm not even going to say any of the names of companies that we have because I want you, like, it's not about that. I want you to, if you can just, because then you only have to figure out one skill. Like if I just sell someone, if I just promote, I get paid. Cool. And I can just do it over and over again. Now over time, you're like, man, I want to make more of the nut. Cool. And then you eat up more of the responsibility. So you can either sell stuff or you can sell skills. You can sell outcomes. And so that's where you develop a certain expertise. So like in the beginning for me, and like the first time ever, like the first money I ever made from a stranger was that I had a lady at the gym. It's a real story. I was in really good shape. I like to think so. And she said, will you meet me and do a nutrition consultation for me? And she didn't even say that. She said, will you help me with my food? I think is what she said. I said, sure. And so we met at a pizza place, ironically. No, this was after college. So this was after graduating from college when I was still consulting. So we met at a pizza place, and I was like, okay, well, what are you currently eating? And she was like, this. And I was like, well, what do you want to do? She's like, I'm trying to lose weight. And I was like, well, this is something I eat for breakfast. It's less calories than your thing. It's pretty good. And try this and try this and try this. And it took like an hour. And then I had like a notepad and I gave her the notes or whatever. And she took out her purse and she wrote $200 on a check and she handed it to me. She was like, thanks so much. And I was like, I was just like looking at the check, looking at her, looking at the check, looking at her. And I was like, okay, don't act surprised. And I was like, oh, thanks. And then she left. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, I just got paid for, but like realistically, at this point, I was competing. So I'm winning. I'm like, I had a state record at that point. Like I was in shape. You know what I mean? And I think she knew I was a state record holder because the gym that I was a powerlifting gym. But I had done some stuff. I had gotten some level of authority on some tiny thing, and people were like, oh, can you help me with that too? And to be really honest with you, my entire life, and I'm saying like, there's many paths, but like my life has been learn something, get good at it, have evidence that you were good at the thing, and then people ask you for help on that thing. And so in the beginning, people asked me how to get in shape, and then I started a business around getting people in shape, and then people who had businesses around getting people in shape asked me how I was getting my businesses that were getting people in shape to work, and then people who had businesses that were national scale, that helped people in a specific niche or industry, started asking me how I was helping people in a specific niche or industry, and then people who had really big businesses just started asking me, how did you get a really big business? And so like my entire life has been simply doing as hard as I fucking could to get good at something, and then do it enough times, and to be really like very clear with you, every time I did it, it was not to move on to the next step, it was to just get good at the thing, and then by getting good at the thing, people asked me about it. And so it wasn't like I lost 10 pounds and then tried to start selling, weight loss advice. I had multiple state records, and I looked good, you know what I mean? Like I was in very good shape. And then people started asking me about it. And then I didn't have one gym and start telling people, hey, here's how you run a gym. I had 6 gyms by the time I was 26. And then people were like, okay, you're 26 and you have 6 gyms, you did all cash flow, like you're doing something right. And then people started asking me about the stuff. And then when I had the licensing business doing $4 million a month, people who had other bigger businesses were doing $1 million a month or 500,000 were like, how do you get to $4 million a month? And I was like, well, this is what I did. And so like I've just tried to figure it out. And it's like the path has always been revealed as I took more steps. And so I think a big fallacy in the early on days is trying to think that you're going to figure out the entire path before you even take the first step. It's just not true.
Real quick, I have the most amazing offer for you, which is all 3 of my books for free. Just cover the shipping. I think it's like $5 or $6 in shipping per book. You get the actual hardback shipped to you. And the reason for that is because some of you guys may know we had 3.6 million copies that were donated from entrepreneurs. And I'm doing my part to give the books away, but I'm also giving the other 2 books to anyone who want them who choose to redeem it. All right. Last time I made this offer, it sold out in like 10 days, so I did buy a lot more books. So if you see this, go check it out, go grab them. These are obviously while supplies last, because this lives in the video forever, and if you get there and it's not there, then don't do it. All right, back to the video.
How important is it to have that money?
I mean, in some ways I think it's everything, in other ways it's nothing. Like one of the cool shameless plug for school, the 30.44% of people who finish their first month of school make their first dollar a month. And that's like, so like, that's why we do it. You know what I mean? Like, I know how hard that first dollar is. Like, there's so much to get the first dollar across, because the second dollar comes so much faster after that. That's why I invest in the company. That's why I'm so adamant about it. But anyways, the point is that yes, I think having the first dollar get across is very important. But if you can reframe it from that experience points perspective, that there's probably 3 levels before that. You have to, like, level 1 is that you have to understand that it's my fault. Level 2 is that you have to use what you have, not what you wish you had, to get to where you want to go. And where you want to go isn't 100 steps forward, it's just the next step. And so, like, I don't think that anger drives me as much as it used to. But it was everything that I had when I started. And so if I had listened to the positivity mantra when I started, I never would have gotten going because nothing made me feel happy. And so they were like, follow your passion. I was like, my passion is to not be poor and to not be here in Baltimore. That's my passion, is not be here. And so that's what drove me. And so I think that it just needs to be restated that, like, is that the goal? Sure. But is that necessary to start? No, it's not. And so I can tell you that even when I was angry and getting through that, making more money did make my life better. Like, I had more ability to deal with inconveniences, hassles, health issues from family members that I had to foot the bill for, like all these things. Like, money can provide value. And so I'll say this thing that a mentor told me. He said, money does not buy happiness, but it can help you avoid pain. And so, like, I think there's nothing wrong with making money. Obviously, I like doing it. But I just hate the people who espouse that you have to feel a certain way to win, or that winning when you are angry or sad or in pain or ashamed is somehow wrong. And so I just, like, you have to meet success where you're at. And the first step you have to take out of anger, and the next step you have to take out of sadness, and the next one you have to take out of shame, and use that to propel yourself forward. All that matters is you take a step. And one of the things that I always like is, for a very long time I didn't consider myself a good person. I mean, I still probably don't, but in terms of, like, I always identified with the villain and the oppressor in most scenarios, which is bad. But anyways, there's a point to this, is that I never thought that I deserved the good life. I didn't think I deserved the happy ending, I'll put it that way. And so the thing that got me through that was the idea, and this felt like, honestly, like gaming the system, so like from the evil side, was that I could still get the good guy's ending if I just did the thing that they do to get the ending. So I didn't have to do it with pure intentions. I didn't have to do it as a great God. But if I just still did the things, I could still get the getting. And I think for me, that realization has been why my ruthless focus on, like, well, what did you do? And to everyone who listens to my stuff, like, it's like, great, throw the emotions out, throw the spiritual energy vibrations out. What do you do? Patience is just figuring out what to do in the meantime. Like, courage is acting as though you weren't afraid. like, what do you do? And then eliminating everything else and then just doing that. And then doing whatever mental tricks you have to do, which is like, there were slaves who worked 7 days a week, so can I. Like, and then alternatively, catastrophizing the alternative path, which is that if I do not do anything, this is what will happen eventually. That pain in the future will be my pain today, and then actively thinking about what that pain would be like, and then seeing if that can make you more uncomfortable than the comfort that you're in. And I think Tony Robbins says this. He says, change happens when the pain of staying the same, when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. And so if you're comfortable in staying the same, the point is to make yourself more in pain to get yourself to move. And so I think there's a skill in being able to future pace and think through what pain you're going to go through. Like, if you're like, man, okay, I have gained 5 pounds a year, and it has been 4 years, so I'm 20 pounds up. Well, if 4 years from now, I'm another 20 pounds heavier, and imagining the snide comments at the holiday party, or if you're a girl, the guy who says, man, she'd be really cute if she lost 40 pounds. Or, like, even, like, I'm going girl's perspective here. A guy who says something that's like, I would be with her, but she's just too fat. She's just not cute enough. And you're like, wow, that's so politically incorrect. Deal with it. It's fucking life. But the thing is like, your thoughts don't need to be politically correct. They're your thoughts. They're no one else's thoughts. And so whatever you have to do to get yourself there, for me, the idea that a girl that I would want to be with would be like, I just don't think he's ambitious enough. I don't think he's successful enough. Like, those ideas killed me. And so I never wanted to be denied entry to somewhere because I didn't have these things. Now, do I believe that people should be denied entry? No, but I also realize that's the way the world is. And so I think you can balance both beliefs. Like, I'd love things to be different, but I accept the fact that they're not.
Is this like a good argument for getting a broke friend? Because I bet other broke friends reduce the pain of staying.
A friend who supports you is someone who deliberately decreases the possibility of failure. And so if you look at your friends and you ask yourself, does this person increase or decrease the possibility of failure with my goal? It's very easy to answer that question. It's yes or no. It's increase or decrease. There's no in between. Do they increase or they decrease my possibility that I get to my goal? If the answer is decrease, get rid of them. Because imagine that you have a 100% chance of hitting your goal, and you have 3 friends that have a 30% decrease. Like, you might now have a fucking, whatever, 3 times 3, or a 27% chance of hitting your goal now because you have 3 terrible friends.
Like negative experience.
Yeah. They're. It's like getting in video games. It's like you've got somebody who's casting like a slow spell on you, and you're like moving so slow, and you're like weak, and like all your hits have like half power. Like, a lot of people need to shed friendships, but the thing is, it's more that they call them friends, but they're not really friends. They're just there, and they're there because they've always been there, but not because they should be there, but because they're going to help you get to where you want to go. They're just there. They exist. They're not going anywhere. They don't have goals, and they're at a different part of their journey. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to start the path of drinking glass and starting to do double time, you got to live your life, and you got to live tomorrow's life and the next day's life, and start dragging that towards you. They're going to be upset about it. And so one of the sayings I recently had that I like a lot, which is, there are no social obligations, only social consequences. And the people who want to deliver those consequences often do it by talking to you less and by avoiding you more. They try to spend less time with you and talk to you less, to punish you for the fact that you missed the party, you missed the going out, you didn't show up at their wedding, you didn't show up at their dog's christening or whatever. But the crazy thing is that if you felt obligated to go, then it means you didn't want to go. And that means that if you didn't want to go, and the punishment of not going is that you don't have to go more in the future because they avoid you and they don't invite you anymore, then to me that's a win-win. You save time today and you save time tomorrow. And I don't understand why people are not willing to deal with that. Like just looking at what happens rather than whatever emotional noise they make with their face at you. Like moving past that, great, you expelled air at me, understood, got it. But the outcome is you will no longer invite me, which is what I want. Great, I feel like we won here. And so thinking second and third order outcomes from what happens when I quote break up with this friend or what happens when I offend this friend, a lot of times it's you closer to your goal. And I've always been okay with that. And like if someone like the moment I have seen somebody as decreased in the likelihood that I hit my goal, I am happy to tell them that. Like I think you are not good for me. I don't think you help me hit what I want to hit. And they'll be like, well, then they'll try and downgrade your goals and say you shouldn't believe this way, and then they'll cast their beliefs on you. And for me, it's like that's amazing that you believe that. I don't believe that, and I don't really want to believe what you believe because then I would have your life, and I certainly don't want that. And so, like again, I make these tweets about this, but it's like if you don't like their life, don't listen to what they say. Like don't take their advice if you don't like what you see. And so, if everyone around you has a life you don't want, then don't listen to any of their advice. Like, and hopefully you're listening to this and watching. Like, if there's some element of my life or whatever that you find awesome, cool. Then maybe some element of what I can share is helpful for you. But you have to put blinders on because there is a period of time where I've said this, but you're not going to be successful enough for the next tier of friends. But you're too different from the friends that you used to have. And so that middle path is very lonely. But the good thing about loneliness is you've got time. And right now, time's what you need because you got to learn stuff. You got to get the skills so you can start trading that for more and more money. And then you can take the money and trade that for more money. But in the beginning, you just have time, and that's what you have to spend. And so if you are broke or you are poor and wish to no longer be broke and poor, the first is owning the fact that everything that has to do with your life is your fault. And a lot of people will reject that. And you're right. Stay poor. You're totally right. You'll never be successful. You're totally right. I believe you. The next step is being willing to use what you have rather than what you think you should have or what you wish you had. The circumstances, the connections, the money, whatever. The passion, the purpose, the meaning behind the work. You can wish for all that stuff, but you don't have it. So you have to use what you have. Which could be anger, could be shame, could be pain, whatever. Then, as soon as you start taking action, everyone around you will collapse and try to pull you down. And so the only way to protect yourself against that is to increase your own approval of self and decrease how much their opinion of you matters. Which means that you have to be proud of you for taking the step and actively look at their lives and think, do I want what they have? If the answer is no, then do not listen to what they say. And then when you do that, you keep walking, you keep taking steps, no matter how painful it is, and you never stop. And if you do that, you will get there. That's it. Cool. In your 20s, you don't need to find yourself. You need to build yourself. Here are 18 tactical lessons I learned about achieving early success. I made my first million at 26. I crossed 100 million net worth at age 31, and this is my roadmap for things I learned along the way. I'd like to normalize a 6-day-a-week, 12-hour per day work week for men between 16 and 28. And despite all the self-worth voodoo that social media and society will tell you, you are valued based on your utility. And when you're young, you have none. But you have a lot of energy. And so trade that energy for experience points and become useful. The first rule of entrepreneurship, according to Alex, is use what you've got. And the reason I like that is because many people always don't start things because they don't have the capital, they don't have the connections, they don't have the whatever insert insecurity or projection of blame and power they want to put on. But the first rule is you use what you have. And so it's about resourcefulness, not resources. And so if you have energy, you use the resource you have, you use what you've got to trade, to develop experience, to develop proof that you can get good at a skill. And you only get good at a skill by not being good at a skill and repeating it and then failing at each time and then making incremental improvements, which take many, many repetitions until you actually get good. And this may be a little controversial, but I'm not here to be nice to you. I'm trying to be kind, which might mean that it hurts a little bit. So let's make this practical. If you have less than $100,000 in savings and you would like to have $100,000 or more in savings, these are the things that I would recommend doing. And that means that you have to check out your ego. Your ego's going for this. All right? You don't care what other people think because they're not going to be there in 10 years. All right? Because you have a whole new group of friends that are way fucking better and cooler. So 1, stop eating out. Discount groceries only. That's if you're super poor. Here's my caveat, if you know how to make money, you already have a base level of skills, then eating Chipotle and whatever you can, DoorDash it in so that you can keep working. The moment I realized I could make $500 every 30 minutes by selling, I was like, oh, I'm never cooking food or grocery shopping ever again. Anything that was less than $500 an hour was now immediately outsourced, right? But this advice is for people who are super broke, okay? So if you don't have the skill set yet, at all, and you're struggling to just get things going, then you need to be completely on the defensive so that you can have enough money so that you can start taking bets. Because the only way that you're gonna get ahead is that you have to make bets. You gotta make bets on education, you gotta make bets on opportunities, you gotta make bets on inventory, you gotta make bets on software, you wanna start a Shopify store, you wanna start a school community, you wanna start something, it's still gonna cost some money, right? You might have to buy a camera, you have to buy some software that helps you edit videos. Like there's some expenses, all right? And so having a big stockpile allows you to be patient. The more money you have, the longer you can think because you don't have to worry about tomorrow. You know that next month and the month after taking care of, because even if you made no money, you've got enough. That's how you can start thinking long term. People are like, think long term, but like unless if you have payroll and you've got rent or you've got groceries to pay, you can't think long term because you're in survival mode. And so I'm trying to get survival to be as low as humanly possible for you so that you can get into thrive mode, but it's all relative. If you make 40 grand a month and spend 40 grand a month, you're gonna be in the same survival mode. But if you make 40 grand a month and spend 4, you're gonna have every month you make 10 months worth of income. And so in 2 months you've got 20 months saved up. You're good, and then you can get super aggressive with that other 36 and start really betting to double down. All right. So here's the very broke 5, 6 things that you can do to immediately spend way less. 1, stop eating out, discount groceries only. 2, stop buying new clothes, go to Goodwill only. 3, only attend free friend events. All right, so think of what I just said. Think about all the events that friends will tell you to come to. Weddings, bachelor parties, birthdays, just nights out because it's Thirsty Thursday, whatever. Only attend free friend events. And if they don't support your goals, they're not your friends. Think about that. If I said, hey, I've got this goal, and I said, hey, there's this human being, and he wants to get you to not have the goal, would you describe him as a friend or an enemy? Think about it. Some of the people in your life that you call friends are actually your enemies. You just don't know it. Now, 4, take the rest of the time that you have to A, apply to jobs that make more than your current job. B, pick up side hustle work. C, learn skills that you can trade for a higher hourly rate than you currently do. When I say trade, I mean you make more per hour than what your current skills pay you. All right, and then 5, find the hardest worker in the room when you enter that new job or that new place, and then double their level of input. So if they knock on 100 doors, you knock on 200. They make 100 dials, you make 200 dials, right? When I had Jacob, my young neighbor, I gave him this exact advice. And he was expected to, on his team, do 100 dials a day. He did between 300 and 400. And so guess what? He got better faster. And then once you follow all of those steps, this is what you need to do next. Wait 36 months. And this is what I mean by patient with your outputs, impatient with your inputs. And the crazy thing is that you can change your life in one decision. I can get drunk, drive a car, and change my life forever, right? I can happen like that. But it can happen just like that the other way. It's just that the outcome's delayed. That's the only difference. You can change your life today in this moment by making these decisions, and your life path will have veered. You will have changed direction. Your tree of life will move. It's just that it takes time for that new direction to bear fruit. Whereas you can poison the fruit in a second. You can kill a tree real fast. You just can't grow one real fast. But it doesn't mean that if a seed's planted and you're watering it, it's not growing. It just takes a second to get above the surface. I think you can solve a lot of male problems by getting in shape and making money. You'll still have problems. They'll just be smaller, and you'll have more resources to handle them. So let's talk about the making money part first. Fundamentally, in order to make money, you have to provide value to someone, either an employer or customers. But either way, you have utility, which you exchange for money. And so by making that a goal, then it means that you're going to increase your own usefulness. And so somebody who is more useful all of a sudden develops other ancillary skills around that utility that they can use in other parts of their lives. If you're good at sales, guess what you can do when you're talking to girls? You can use the same conversational skill set. If you're trying to negotiate a purchase for a car or a house or whatever, like those skills generalize, they transfer across domains. And so a lot of people think, like, well, when would I ever be a salesperson, or when would I ever be an outbound, whatever? Like, it doesn't matter. It's not about that thing. The thing is, just like real life skills actually do generalize. Like, this isn't elementary school or middle school when you're learning calculus or algebra or whatever and thinking, like, what am I going to use this in real life? 1, it is real life right now. 2, these skills do get used across domains. Of all of my millionaires and billionaires, to a person, they started in what I would consider a high volume sales environment. So that's either door knocking, cold calling, or some sort of in-person business where they had many conversations with strangers on a daily basis. And I think and I'm talking not like a month or 6 months, I'm talking like 3-5 years where no one knew their name. They were just some faceless representative that stood there at the door, saw people, sold memberships, sold insurance, sold solar, sold whatever. And the thing is like skill development happens through volume and feedback loops. So it's the number of repetitions you have times the amount of improvement between repetitions. Brute forcing the amount of volume definitely will help if you can give yourself feedback. I've seen people say, hey, I've actually made 100 pieces of content. Now this is like 1% of people because most people do nothing. But of the 1% of people who say, okay, I posted every day for a year. The thing is they didn't do the most important part, which is you don't just like make a video and post it just every day, like, hey, make a video, post it, make a video, post it. You have to look at what you did and what you could do better. Fundamentally, that is the cornerstone of feedback. And so you look at the top 10 videos you made over the last month and you say, okay, how do I do more of that? And how do I do less of the bottom 10%? And you just pick one thing that you did well there and you try and do it in every video going forward. And that develops a checklist of things to do so that you develop the skill. And so speaking from my own experience, the first sales conversation I ever had, first off, I had 0 sales training. No one was like, hey, this is the script, this is how you go over. They're like, hey, here's a new lady, go sign her up. And so I was like, okay. And I didn't even know this was a sale. I didn't know the term sales. He said, go sign her up. And I said, okay. And so I walked over and she was like, hey, I want to know more about the gym. And I said, what do you want to know? And she was like, well, I mean, like, how much is it? And I was like, oh, it's whatever, $150 a month. And she was like, okay. And I was like, you want to sign up? And she said, I left my credit card at home. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I'll be back with the credit card. And I was like, cool. And so I walked out, and it was like 2 minutes, right? And I walked out, and the owner, Sam, was there with a few of other gym owners. He had brought a few gym owners, and so it was like 3 or 4 gym owners there. And he was like, damn. He was like, that was fast. And I was like, yeah. He's like, you closed her? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, with a credit card? And I was like, oh no, she's gonna go get it. She'll be back. And they just looked at each other, and then looked back at me, and then just started laughing at me uncontrollably, like couldn't breathe at how dumb what I had just said was. And the thing is I had no experience. And I tell that story because so many people assume that like I walked out of the womb closing deals. You know what I mean? Like, hey, nurse, what do you do later? You know what I mean? Like, but it wasn't like that, right? Like I didn't know. I didn't even know the term. And so over time, I just started developing like, okay, well, what do you do? And I watched other people. So I was like, okay, they start with asking them why someone's there, asking them about their goals, asking them things that they've done in the past that didn't work. I was like, okay, that seems to work okay. And then when they ask them to buy, then if they don't want to say yes, they ask them more questions rather than just saying okay. So I started to develop at least an understanding of the framework of how sales occurred. That still wasn't good, right? And so then I went through like that rocky cutscene period where this is where I'm very grateful for this, is that Facebook ads is when I started running in 2013 were super cheap. And so it actually gave me so many repetitions. Because not only was I taking 15 to 20 consults a day in person, I was also working leads. And so I'm talking to strangers over the phone to set the appointments. And so all I got was just names on a list. And I would call them, set the appointment, like, who's this again? All of that. And by the way, if you are local, you just say the name, pause with a question mark at the beginning. You're like, John? And they'll be like, yeah. You're like, this is Alex. I'd pause, and they'd be like, I'd be like, from Facebook, you signed up for a blah, 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 our thing? Yeah, I'm just calling to make sure that you're not a crazy person from the internet, and neither am I. I was like, we're actually on the corner of X and Y. I was like, right next to the 7-Eleven. They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. I just wanted to see what time you want to come by. I was like, we have the sweetest facility in the world. Not really, but it's at least pretty decent for this area. But we have 5 out of 5 coolness. And they would just laugh, and they'd be like, I can make it at 6. And I'm like, 6 works. I was like, do you want a picture of me or just of the address? And they're like, just the address. I'm like, all right, sounds good. I'll text it to you and I'll see you later today, right? So that kind of, like, notice the like half giggles between each word. Like, it's showing that you're a positive tone person, high energy. Someone's like, man, this guy seems cool, or this gal seems cool, right? And so they're more likely to show up. They're more likely. Now, if I maintain that tone, if they give me an objection, I can pivot really easily. If I'm like neutral, or like, hi, I saw that you signed up on the internet for our thing. Would you like to come in? They're like, well, tell me more about it. It's like, well, it's just, if you have no room for messing up. And so I always tried to have more rapport and bring a lot of energy. And the thing is like, if you've seen any of my content, I'm not naturally like a high energy person. I will continue to work, which is different than being like up here. And so I developed a lot of things to try and keep myself energized. And so I had a small trampoline that I would bounce on before and between every sales appointment. It sounds ridiculous, but if you, I'm telling you, it's like $100. If you buy one of those little trampolines and you bounce either between sales calls or between people, like I'd have people coming in as I was still bouncing, and I'd be like, I know this is ridiculous. I was like, but try and be in a bad mood on a trampoline. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. I challenge you too. You could be in a bad mood. If you try to jump around like you feel like such a child, it's ridiculous. But what would happen is like I would also get a little bit of exercise, my blood would keep moving, but it's also just like mentally. Literally bouncing gave me a lot of energy for these appointments. And so I say this because I developed all of these things over time. And so if you're starting out, you're not going to be good. That's why you're new. You have no experience. But there's a difference between, there's a story that, I can't remember what it is, but there was a foreign kid who had never seen a banana before. And so the adult gave the kid a banana. And so the kid took the banana and then bit right into it with the skin and everything. And another child was like, you're such an idiot. And then the adult yelled at that child and said, no, he just doesn't know any better. And there's a very big difference between being dumb and being inexperienced. Right now, you just don't have reps. And so you're going to make a lot of mistakes, like biting into the banana, like for just letting someone walk away, assuming it's a close, and they say that they're just going to come back and call you with their credit card, right? By the way, that never happens. Very rarely. But instead, you want to just peel that banana, you want to bite into the banana, bite into the orange, all of those mistakes as quickly as possible, and not judge yourself for making the mistake, and see the mistake as part of the process of being like, that didn't work. That didn't work. And if I develop enough of these doesn't works, then you just kind of walk the minefield and you get to where you're trying to go. And people are like, wow, you're so good at this. And you're like, oh, no, I actually just know all the things not to say in a sale. And then they end up buying. I just avoid all that. And then they buy. And to be clear, I think I have a similar piece of advice, but for very different reasons, of telling young men in general, or men, to work harder. And it's not because I think it's some sort of, beating your chest, I'm an alpha, whatever thing. It's just that for me, the point of my life is to become the best version of me. And in order to do that, I need to learn. Because there's a huge discrepancy between where I am and where I want to go. And the discrepancy is going to get filled with skills, which means that I need to do repetitions to acquire failures that I can learn from to get better from. And if I can do more of that in a shorter period of time, I will learn more skills, and by definition, I will shrink the distance between myself and my ideal self. And so that is pretty much the only thought process I have around this. And I also believe that you need to be patient with outputs and impatient with inputs. So let me unpack that. Patience in general is figuring out what to do in the meantime. So when someone says, hey, be patient, what they just mean is figure out something else to do in the meantime. And so if I'm telling you to be patient with outputs, it means that you basically just have to figure out something else to do in the meantime while you wait for outputs to occur. Because you can't output, money doesn't appear. You have to do something and then money happens, right? But the doing something part is the thing that you can control. The money happening is the part that you don't control, that comes afterwards. It's an outcome, right? And so when I say patient with outputs, that's the first part. The second part is impatient with inputs. And so if being patient is figuring out what to do in the meantime, impatience is doing the thing in the meantime, right? And so it's the opposite of that. It's the thing you do in the meantime. And so if you want to be impatient with the input is the thing. That's the action you do. And so by delineating that, if you hear yourself thinking, man, why hasn't this happened yet? You're talking about outputs. And that means, great, if I think that thought, I need to do more of this input, right? And so use your input, your action, your doingness, the thing you use your hands for, as your coping mechanism for your impatience with outputs. I want to say that one more time. Whenever you have that feeling that things should be happening faster, use action as your coping mechanism. I used to write this down a lot and say it, which was action alleviates anxiety. And so when I would have this anxiety about the future of like, why haven't I made it yet? Why are these other people doing better than me? Like, Is this not going to work? What if I'm on the wrong path? Action alleviates anxiety. The only thing I could control is that I would work, is that I would get better. And the key point there was that it wasn't just working for work's sake, it was working with the intention to improve. And so you want to do repetitions because by doing things more times you get better at them, typically just by accident. But if you're deliberate about the point of doing this, when I started working at a gym, going from a white collar job, it wasn't because I wanted to become a trainer for the rest of my life. It was because I wanted to learn the skills. And then I knew that once I learned those skills, if I owned a gym, then I would know how to do the training part as well, and that would be good for me. And so then when I was a gym owner, and when I started working at a gym, I wanted to own a big chain of gyms. That was my whole goal to start with. I wasn't getting into this for one. Like, I never had the goal of only owning just one gym. And so even when I started that gym, the whole point, and I worked all the time, is I thought of all the things that I didn't know how to do yet. And so it wasn't about, great, I've made it, I own a gym. It was like, I'm so deprived of where I want to be. I have to fill this gap as fast as I possibly can. And so that's why I spent so much time on this and got feedback from as many human beings as I possibly could who were ahead of me. So I want to say this clearly. Once I started my gym, one, I paid for a mastermind for gym owners before owning a gym. And I did that because I figured, well, why would I start a gym until I learned all the stuff that you guys did wrong? I was like, I'll just learn from all y'all's mistakes. It sounds like a great deal for me. It almost felt unfair. I was like, yeah, okay. He said, don't start at one of those locations. He said, have good storefront. He said, make sure that you have, good parking. I was, ooh, these are all good, good things. He was like, don't go too big. I was like, okay, that's good. And they're like, make sure your rent's under this per foot. I was like, all right, make sure I got that, right? And so I took all these notes and that I would have just made huge mistakes on the upfront. Now, once I did start my gym, what a lot of people don't know is that every weekend I would either be on phone calls or I'd be driving out to other gym owners. And thankfully, because I was so young when I started my business, they were just like, they felt bad for me. And so they would just sit there and I'd be like, hey, why do you do that? Hey, why do you do that? Hey, why do you do that? And it was like, they'd be like, God, you're such a pain in the ass. But I just wanted to learn, right? But I was always like willing to help them with anything they had. You know what I mean? I was like, let me show you the stuff that's working well for me. And I would always just share it. And the thing is I would go there and they would say they did something and I'd be like, huh, that's weird. That's different than the other guy. And I like that way better. It didn't mean I'd take everything as fact, but I got a lot of ideas from that and then I would use them. And if they didn't work, I would just toss them out. And if they did, I kept it. And that's how I quickly iterated the gym model to become much better than a lot of people's models, despite me being younger, because I was able to leverage everyone else's experience as fast as I could and jam it into my own. And so I think like the people who move faster than life learn faster. And the only way you learn is by changing your behavior with the same conditions, which means that if a person walks in, I say, this is my 6-point script. A person who's identical walks in right afterwards. If I've learned something, that script changes. It means same condition, new behavior. And so if you keep doing the exact same thing every single day, then you may not be learning. And it's a key point. It's good to work hard, but it's good to work hard and smart, which means that the work you do gets better because you tweak things. And so if you're not documenting the process that you have, and I'm not saying making content about it, but literally looking back at game footage, looking at the calls you did, looking at the content you did. I do this today. People ask me like, what are the masterminds you're into? What are the courses you learn from? I have now broken apart the learning process that I have that works best for me because I see the biggest gains and improvement haven't come from advice from me for the most part. They came from looking at data, which was, let me look at the last 2,000 ads I made. Let me look at the top 50. Let me look at what these ones have in common. Let me look at what they don't look like compared to the bottom 50. Okay, these ones have these characteristics, these don't. I'll do more of this and less of that. And then I do another 100 ads and I look at the top 10 again. I say, what do these ones have that these ones don't? And I do that for sales calls, I do that for content, I do that for meetings, I do that for businesses in general when you start zooming out. And so that process of do a lot of volume, then look at the outcomes that were good, look at the activities that led to those outcomes that are positive, do more of those activities, look at the bottom percentages, look at the things that led to not having that happen, and do less of those. And if you're younger, and this is specific for everyone who's listening to this video, if you're probably sub 30, sub 28, maybe, right? If you're in your 20s or less, you can probably get away with this, which is that people ahead of you are more willing, believe it or not, to feel like they have status. So you can give them status by saying, be a mentor. And the thing is, a lot of young guys have a lot of ego, right? Because you're trying to prove yourself, trying to be a man, whatever. The thing is that if you humble yourself, it's not like there's some fucking massive scoreboard where it's like who humbled themselves to whom across the whole US. It's not exist. It's just something one dynamic, right? And so if you go and say, hey, I don't know anything, I'm happy to learn. If you do that, then a lot of people are like, oh, well, he humbled himself. Well, yeah, I'm happy to teach you. And the thing is they'll give you advice that's worth thousands of dollars, years of your life for free. If you just say, you're better than I am at this. But the thing is that at the end of the day, none of it matters, but scoreboard would be the thing that matters in business, right? And so the only thing that precedes the scoreboard is your learning. I've spent ego points, I've spent dollars, I've spent time, I've spent social capital, I spent every resource that I had to get more learning faster. Because fundamentally, the only thing, and I think this is probably one of the biggest gifts my father gave me, is believing that I am the asset I am investing in. And the cool thing is that you are the permanent hold, right? You can't sell you. Like, you're you until you die. And so this is the one asset you've got because you compound. Skills compound. When you get really good at sales and really good at finance, guess what? You can raise $1 billion because you know how the finance world works and you know how the sales world works, right? If you know how to code and market, then guess what? You can build software and sell it to gazillions of people because you have the product and the acquisition. Like, skills stack disproportionately. If you only know one, you might not be able to make a tenth as much as if you know two. Now, obviously, those are big bucketed terms that have many, many, many skills underneath of them. But fundamentally, when you think about it that way, you become a weapon.
Real quick, I have a gift for you. This is the $100 million scaling roadmap. It's something that my team and I put 200 plus hours into building and breaking the stages of scaling into 10 steps. All right, and so what we did is we broke down everything that basically got us stuck and what we did to break free at each level of the business. And if you'd like to know what product, marketing, sales, customer service, IT, recruiting, human resources, and finance look like at the stage that you're currently at, this is a free gift. So all you have to do is go to acquisition.com/roadmap. You can plug in your business information. And if you want our help, you want my help to help you break through whatever level of scaling you're at, this is not a promise, I'm just saying you love to help. On the thank you page, you can book a call. Every month we have a workshop out here at my headquarters. You actually talk to my real team that does does our marketing, does our emails, does our ads, does our copy, does our sales, does our finance, does our recruiting. The real people are doing this at a very high level. And what's really cool about that is that they can typically find and spot what the constraints are in a business like that. And so it's one of the most valuable things I can possibly do. Obviously, space is limited based on our actual headquarters. But that's interesting. On the thank you page, you can book a call. No pressure. This is a gift either way. It's absolutely free.
So let's tackle the second part. I said you can solve a lot of male problems by getting in shape and making money. And so let's talk about the getting in shape side. So you can avoid tons of problems in life by doing one thing: going to bed on time. And so instead of setting alarms to wake up, set alarms to go to sleep on time. It's hard to wake up late when you go to bed at 9. Right? And so the thing is that one simple behavior actually can eliminate a lot of the things that derail men, especially young men. And so Charlie Munger talks about this a lot, which is like, all I want to do is find out where I'm going to die and never go there. The whole point is he thought so much more about avoiding stupidity than trying to be intelligent. It's kind of like the stupidities are very easy to identify, the intelligence is hard. But if you avoid all stupidity, you just become intelligent by default. And so if you define intelligence the way I do, which is rate of learning, so how quickly you pick things up, that is intelligence. If you can avoid all of these things that make you look like an idiot, right? Then you become more intelligent. And so let's talk about this from the getting in shape perspective. Show me a situation where you have two groups of men. One group of men that is really out of shape and fat, and another group of men that's really in shape, that are going to outperform one another, and this is generalized, you have to take random sampling of the population, a bunch of in-shape guys, a bunch of overweight guys, who's going to do better at any task over and over again. If we pick 10 tasks that are completely different, the in-shape guys are going to do better than the out-of-shape guys. Period. They're going to have more energy, they're going to be more focused. If it's anything interrelation-based, like those guys are going to close higher percentages. If you're better looking, you will close more. If you're better looking, you get paid more. If you're better looking, you get more promoted. If you're better looking, you do better in content. Period. Fight me. And so the thing is like if you have this one thing that affects every way that people see you, and the only thing you have to do is control what you put into your mouth, then don't you think it's worth developing that most basic skill of discipline at this point in your life? Because the thing is that you want to get in shape young. Because if you're not in shape, guess whose fault that is? So get in shape now. Thing is it costs time, not money. And right now, you've got time and not money. And time only becomes more expensive as you age. So buy it now while time costs you the least and you have the fewest responsibilities. It'll help you no matter what life path you choose. The thing that no one recognizes is that drinking costs you 2 days. The day you drink and the day you recover. And sometimes the weeks afterwards for the stupid thing you did while you were drunk that everyone else saw. It reminds me of this quote from Muhammad Ali, and I asked my team to pull it up because I think it's so good, also because he was the greatest of all time and just a cool dude.
What's the central part of your training? Is it running? Is it sparring? Or?
Central part is dodging the nightclubs and the parties and the girls. You want the truth? And being in the bed by yourself 9 o'clock at night. And if you can get by that, you'll make it. Yeah, that's the truth. Now, I'll tell you the truth. You talk about that running and hitting the bags and jogging and fighting when you want. But dodging ladies is the main thing. Especially when you're pretty like me.
And I'll speak to myself personally. When I had my intense periods of work, I would take off for a long, long time. So the longest that I took off was 2 years while I was scaling gym launch from, the 20 months we went from 0 to 4.5 million a month, 4.4 to be technical. I didn't drink that whole period. And once things settled out, I was like, all right, I'm willing to drink again. And right now, acquisition.com is scaling like crazy. And so Layla and I both said, let's just stop drinking for the foreseeable. And same thing now. So that was when I was in my 20s. This is now when I'm in my 30s. And I'll probably continue this until I feel like I'm at a place where things feel chill again, and then like maybe I'll partake again. But the thing is like if you're hungry, argue me the opposite, which is me drinking more will make it more likely for me to hit my goals. I think you'd have a tough time making that argument. And so right now, everything's compounding is amplified, right? The stuff you do now amplifies throughout your career and your life. And so I would want to stack as many advantages as I can to my favorite, which is like, I'm gonna go to sleep on time. I'm gonna not drink, right? I'm going to get in shape, right? I'm going to do as many repetitions as I can. I'm gonna humble myself with people who are more experienced than I am, even if I think I'm smarter than them. They still know more. And there's a big difference, and this is what I think is really tough for younger guys, is that your brain at 25 to, like 25-ish, 25 to 30 is like peak processing power. But I'm way fucking smarter now than I was then because I've still learned more. And that's the thing is that you may be smarter than someone in sheer processing power, but they still might know more than you. And so you can't live their life. And especially if somebody is further ahead, then it still means that they have knowledge that you don't. And so listen and humbling yourself to somebody, even if you think you are smarter, will teach you more. Because again, argue the opposite. I will learn nothing from no one. How does that help you? It helps you if your ego feel good, but at some point your ego's gonna have to rectify its good feeling with reality, which is that you're broke as shit and no one cares. And so I would rather humble myself rather than have the world humble me. This is a Bible quote that I just really like a lot. It's from Matthew 23:12. He said, those who are humble will be exalted, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled. I actually told that to one of our team the other day because I felt like his ego was getting a little bit bigger than it probably should have been. And I said, listen, man, I was like, if you want to get humbled, keep doing what you're doing. I was like, but if you want people to talk you up, I was like, humble yourself, let your work for you, and then everyone else will exalt you. And so I think most men want to be respected. They don't have respect, and so they compensate by exalting themselves because it makes them feel better in the short term, but you look like an idiot in the long term. And think about it like this, like for some reason, I don't know why we're wired this way, but we say nice things about ourselves and we feel good, but everyone else feels bad, right? If everyone else says nice things about you, it doesn't make them feel bad to say it, but it makes you feel good. Think about those people in your life who always like talk themselves up. It's like, what do you see? You're like, this guy's so insecure. It's obvious. And you look that way. You don't feel that way, but you look that way. And some of the things that you develop as you get older is the separation between how I look and how I feel, which is like, oh, even though this feels good, I look dumb doing this. Your feelings can lie to you in terms of how well this behavior is serving you with your goals in the long term. And while we're talking about your friends exalting you and your friends saying you're cool, how much do their opinions of you really matter? Because now this is going to take a completely different direction than you expected, which is you being humble is a description that other people would give to you, but it relies on you caring a lot of what they think, which is a double-edged sword. And the younger you are, actually at all points, it hurts you. It's kind of like the stock market. One person, two person, 1 day or 2 days in the stock market, it's just about sentiment. But how big the stock goes over a decade is about how good the intrinsic stock is. And so if a few people say you're an asshole, no big deal. If everyone says you're an asshole, probably a problem, right? And so it's understanding the nuance between that. But your friend group has a disproportionate sway over your behavior. And so your reference group is one of the #1 correlations with how big your life gets, or rather, the goals you achieve. Now, they've done the studies in terms of finance because it's easy to quantify, but your reference group, the 5 people you compare yourself to, not necessarily spend the most time with, but compare yourself to, are the ones that determine your future. And so sometimes you have to like your goals more than you like your friends. And every person who wants to do something in their life or has done something with their lives is going through the exact same chapter that you're going through right now. And it's the lonely chapter. It's the chapter where you don't fit in with your old friends, but you don't have the achievements yet to fit in with a new group of friends. And you're doing all this stuff, right? The fruit tutorials, you're watching these videos, and you're reading everything you can get your hands on. And you're trying to set up whatever your podcast is or your content thing, right? And you're going through it and you're thinking to yourself, like, is this even worth it? Because you're not seeing any signs of success. But the sign of success is the hate that you get along the way. It is the leading indicator. And what you can't do is bend the knee to their hate and try and fit back in and conform because it's comfortable and it's warm. It's like the scene in the Matrix when Trinity opens the door, the very beginning, in the first Matrix, when Neo's about to take the red pill, and he wants to get out of the car. And Trinity says, you've been down that road, Neo. You know that road. And you know exactly where it ends. And I know that's not where you want to be. And then he closes the door. And he gets back in and he goes, they go take the red pill. So right now, this moment that you're going through is Trinity opening the door and saying, you could go back. You could go party. You could go to the nightclub. You could say that this was just a hobby. You could downplay what you're doing. Like, oh, I'm just trying it out. Oh yeah, I'm not really that into it. It's just something I found, right? But then as you're saying, you feel like a fake because you're lying to yourself, you're lying to them about what your real intentions are. And in that moment, when you're trying to think about having that conversation, you remember exactly why you left, why it is that road, and you know exactly where it ends, and that's not where you want to be. And the thing is that your goals will stick with you longer than these relationships. Your goals will serve you more than these relationships. And this is the stuff that no one will tell you. I can tell you personally, I talk to one friend that I have from middle school and high school, all right? I talk to one person, 2 people from college. And it's not like we talk all the time. I talk to him every 6 months or so. And so I say this because although these relationships feel like they're incredibly important in your life right now, they will disappear. The majority of these friendships are based on convenience. You're only friends with them because they lived in your dorm, they lived in your neighborhood, they went into English class with you. But as soon as your conditions change, you change where you're at. Many of them will fade away because you'll develop new skills, you'll develop new contacts, you'll meet new people who are upskilled from them. And then you'll compare them to these people. And you'll be like, man, these are better friends. These are people who are more aligned with my goals. They're trying to grow. And I want to work all day Saturday. They're like, cool, I'll work with you. Rather than being like, dude, we're going on a pontoon boat. Like, where are you going to be? And you have to accept that as the price. And the thing is, it's like, it's only if you want that. Like, if you want to live a life that is the same as everyone else's, then you can do what everyone else does. The only issue is when you want to do what everyone else does, but get what none of them have. If you want to be exceptional, by definition, you will be the exception. You will not be normal. You will be unlike the others. And so it makes sense that you would be in the out group. And it hurts as a human being because you want to be in the in group. It's part of our DNA. Shame is a real thing. And we don't want to feel that because in the natural world, if you're outside of the group, you have a much lower likelihood of living and procreating. So it's strong in our DNA to be in group. But the thing is that you're actually not in group or out of group. You're transitioning. You're between groups. And so in that lonely chapter, that's where you can do a disproportionate amount of work because you have no distraction. So you listen to the podcast, you read the tweets, you watch the videos, you consume the content because you know deep down, I can do more than this. And you begin to see the person that you could be and realize how far you need to go to get there. But despite how far away it seems, your goals, the best version of you look back down the dead-end road and you know that's not where you want to be. And so you keep going and realize that there's no turning back. Once you see the promised land, once you see what you could become, you can't go back. And if you're not sure who your real friends are, 1, ask, is it more likely or less likely